There we go. Sound is working. Okay. I got really stressed out a few weeks and or months ago when the Willamette website changed because my Google PageRank changed. And if there's one thing I care a lot about, it's my Google PageRank. And the reason for that is because when people tell someone to use a search engine to find something, they don't say Bing it, they don't say Yahoo it. No one has ever used the term DuckDuckGo in a sentence, right? But they do use Google. And if you type in either, to my knowledge, Calvin Willamette or my unpronounceable last name, due to a combination of search engine optimization. So I always joke that I don't actually use passwords for any of my stuff because no one can spell my last name. So all my passwords are just password. But you have to type my last name incorrectly, so you'll never get access to my account, right? It can't be done. It's impossible. So if you type in either Calvin Willamette, which you probably know how to spell, or Calvin Deutschfein, which you probably don't, I control both of these first pages, right? Look at this. I'm the greatest. Look how famous I am. Okay. And then I can click on this website and see my beautiful shining face, which I look at a lot because my monitor is very dark, so it doesn't hurt my eyes, so I can see my reflection in it, right? You are all here because for some reason you got tricked into letting me teach you something, so you click on the teaching link, and then you are doing machine learning. Ta-da. Okay. I think of this as the course website, and I would like to give you a little tour of this before we get any further along. I have set up the default linkage to the schedule, anticipating that's what you usually want to use, and I think that is true at all points in time except right now on the very first day of class. So let's start with home. This is the email I sent you, and I edited this out. I am not using a textbook this term. If I did use a textbook, it would be this one. So if you would like a textbook very much, you should use this one. It is provided in a variety of formats, including slide decks very similar to the ones I will show you. So if you're like, geez, I don't like how Calvin does X, this is your alternative, right? And that won't even hurt my feelings. So don't tell me, because it won't hurt my feelings, so you don't have to know, right? Okay. There is a silly bus, which is like a bus that's not very serious, right? Is that a good one? All right. Okay, some of you got it. All right. Yeah. I don't think there's anything too interesting on here. Every term I've taught at Willamette, which is a large number now, like 7 or something.
We have the same amount of time, don't make it seem like we've been here forever.
So 8 then. So like so long, right? Like I remember when Mount Hood formed, right? Do you remember that one, Kendall? Sorry, Grayson. So every year I come here and I say, no one has ever successfully convinced me that taking points off on assignments causes students to learn more. And every year, one student is like, yeah, but then what's my grade in the class? It's like, well, I didn't take any points off, so it's an A, right? That's how it works, right? So like the things to do to not get an A in this class are like not turn in work or me not know who you are because you show up so little. So just don't do either of those things. And if you're doing something like on the assignments that looks really sketchy, I'm going to let you know because I want you to learn. Okay, so that's how this works. And then the other thing to do about this is don't go to another professor and be like, Calvin gives us all A's, why can't you do that? Do not do that. That is the other thing to not do, okay? Right? So we're all working very hard. I will be grading all of the assignments. And then at the end of the term, there's going to be a distribution, which at high probability is going to only contain A's, right? But we don't actually know until we observe it, right? Okay. This is what we're learning this term. One of the benefits of the way I like to grade is that I spent a certain amount of time in other people's classes. So like when you go through grad school to become a me, they like make you TA for people. And in all of those classes, there were like extremely complicated late work policies that I'm sure you're familiar with because every professor does them, right? And those late work policies are so that we cannot feel bad when something happens to you and you don't turn the homework in on time. The other thing no one ever convinced me of is that it is better to keep working on homework that is already like overdue than to start working on the new homework. And since no one has ever convinced me of that, there is no late work policy, as in, do not turn it in past the deadline, I do not care, you can do whatever you want. At any given time, I want you to work on the most recently assigned homework with all of your available time. I have designed the course so that that makes sense to do. Now, if for some reason you end up with excess time and there's a homework in the past that you haven't done and you want to do it, by all means you can do that, right? But that is not my recommendation for your learning. My recommendation is always to work on the most recently assigned homework. Last one in here, I'm expecting this to be a question. For this course specifically, actually, I've been writing a bunch of code, getting my course material ready. The generative AIs, and I was specifically using 3 of them. I asked ChatGPT to generate some code for me. I was writing some code in Google Colab, which meant I used Gemini. And then I turned on Copilot inside VS Code. And those are the 3 places I write code. All of them were kind of helpful. And they were helpful in the following manner. If I wanted to do something and I didn't know how to do it, usually the generative AI could not do the thing. But very frequently, it gave me a function or a formula or a library that I did not find through looking up what I was trying to do. So by asking the generative AI after I got stuck through my other means, oftentimes it gave me something else to check out and see if it worked. Some things that it was really bad at was making a graph based on a description. I'm assuming you all know how to do that already, right? And so since you can kind of already do the visualization, my line has been it makes a lot of sense for you to use AI without the expectation that it will write the code for you, right? If it happens to start writing the code for you, good job. Like, I'm happy for you, right? That's great. That's really good. I think that's all. Everything else is university policies, so it should be things you're familiar with, and if you're not, that's okay too. Okay, that's the syllabus. Should I even ask if there's any questions on it? You don't care, right? Does anyone have a question on the syllabus? Do you have a question on the syllabus? No? Okay. Oh, I'm supposed to point with an open hand. I'm working on being inclusive and tolerant and understanding. Oh yeah, we meet 6 to 10, which, like, just saying that out loud, it's like, that's such a late number, right? Okay, we won't talk about it, and then we won't notice. Okay. This is the schedule. Here's how I think of this schedule, which might be more helpful to you. I have listed 15 weeks on here. For credit hour compliance, I need to do 14 instructional sessions, and one of these is spring break. So that's where that comes from. That's exactly how much time we're supposed to have to work with. The 8th and 15th of these are for assessment, so I am going to give a midterm. I've told you how I feel about grading, so what's the midterm for? The midterm is grading me. As an instructor at any given time, you should have some level of nervousness that you're actually teaching anything, so I'm going to take one observation in week 8. And if it's a disaster, there will be accompanying mode changes and something, right? So usually that midterm will include some questions on how you're doing, and then also like if you like what I'm doing, right? So just be ready for that with thoughts. And then at the end, we have final presentations. The audience of the final presentation is the person that interviews you for a job when you finish this program. So this is just practice talking. That's what it's for. That means we are supposed to have 14 sessions, which I'll denote this way, even though that's not 14, right, but it's close. Which side of you are me? This is 14 and that's 41. Yep. This is 14? Yep. Okay, there's 14, right? There's a midterm and a final project. That means there's 12. Okay, I have 12 lecture topics ready, and none of them are large language models, because no one cared about large language models in 2001 when we set this curriculum. I have this many. I'm going to try and do a magic trick. 3 prepared lectures on large language models, and I don't know where they go. So what this means is I reserve the right after the midterm to, put this stuff in the blender, make it like a little smoother and soupier, and see if at any point in time that turns into a large language model, right? And this lecture right here, deep learning, is the most obvious thing to start replacing with large language models. Oh, what's that? Oh, someone snuck the word Python on the website. That's so controversial. So one of the things that I also wanted to do this term is the large language models tend to run on forms of technology stacks that are Python exclusive. The specific thing they tend to use is the CUDA API for working on NVIDIA graphics cards. I don't know if you care about that. You don't have to. What that means is that the native language for deep learning and LLMs is Python. Some of you know Python, some of you don't. All of you will be expected to know Python at some point in your life for some reason. I am not going to teach this class in Python. I am going to do some things to set you up for success in Python. I plan to do the LLM portions of the class in Python without accompanying homework. So you will watch me do Python, and you can follow along at your discretion. I'm going to provide supplemental material, which means every lecture will have a Python version that is uploaded to this website, and this is today's lecture. It is there in Python right now. You can follow along with it if you would like. And then the last thing I'm going to do, oh goodness, oh, I broke my brain. That's a common thing that happens. Remember the 14? To get up to 14 before the end of class, I can't take next week off. And to not be a terrible person, I have to take next week off. So to solve that, I'm going to use a new technology a lot of people haven't heard of yet, called YouTube. And what I've done here is I am preparing a series of videos on using the Python data stack. I got really into Quarto about 6 weeks ago when it became my entire personality. How many of you know what Quarto is? Let's get those, let's fix that by next time we meet, okay? This is an example of what I think is useful enrichment content for you that's not required, so I'm making it the subject of next week's lecture, which will not be delivered in person. I will not be here. You can show up and watch the videos on your laptop in this room at this time if you want, but I will not be taking attendance, okay? I think that's everything. Does that all make sense? Does anyone have any questions about how stuff works? Does it seem like I know what I'm doing? I had a plan. Like, in my mind, it's so clear, right? Okay. Other things going on here. I'm giving you all the code I work with, so you can just download this. And you can open, I don't know what that's going to open with on my system. Turns out VS Code, which takes 45 minutes to open for some reason. Would you look at that? It's a markdown document. Oh, it's slow. Oh, look at, oh dear. What's it doing? Okay. There is homework. I wonder when this is due. Let's see. Probably January 27th. I want to see how this first homework goes. What I would like to happen is you to make something like this in RStudio or Posit Cloud or Quarto. Upload it to a GitHub page using the techniques that I show you on the King Day lecture, and then post about it on LinkedIn with a note like, hey, look at this cool thing I found about wine in the Pacific Northwest, and just get like job offers, just like so many, right? Like competing salaries, people like fighting over you, like hordes of screaming fans, right? I don't know if it's realistic to ask you to do a little bit of machine learning and a lot of web development all by the first time. So what I'm asking is that somehow an R or Q markdown document and an HTML document find their way to me in an email from your @willamette.edu address. I would like that to be a link to a web page, but you can just attach the files if you need to. Can I get like thumbs up that that seems possible? Are you just doing this because you're under duress? You all have to agree with me, right? I'm all powerful. I can ask for anything I want. Stop that. Versus the way this was formatted in the past, I have changed the wording in a way that has made the instructions a little bit less clear, which I don't love, to make it more clear what I want the finished product to look like, which I do love. This class has a low-grade focus on technical communication and writing, sort of carrying forward what I hope to be the results of your data ethics class. Machine learning is like pretty okay, but what I think I learned from the big LLM surge is no one knows how to think about it at all, so you have to tell them. So there's also going to be a focus on communicating results in this class. These are usually under the ethics summary. What is understanding this? Does anyone know how to say that word? Is it vignette or vignette?
I think it's anglicized as vignette or vignette. English.
It depends. That's not the answer we want. I think we should take a vote. Okay. So everyone,
French or not?
Normal people say vignette.
let's get ground truth here. Did I spell it right?
Vignette.
Yeah,
Did y'all hear that? I said vignette.
vignette would just be ET, right? It wouldn't be ETTE.
Why would I know that?
I don't know.
Thank you for assuming I'd know. That was very complimentary. Okay. Do we say? Oh, we say shoot. What's the school's name? Willamette.
Willamette.
I'm fighting for my life up here. Okay, right? We have to get through another 3 hours and 36 minutes of this, just so you know. Okay. No, I'm having fun. Okay. I don't know if you're having fun. I'm having fun, and that's what matters to me. Okay. Okay. Let's learn some machine learning. Yeah? Okay. So, few changes to these slides for some of you that have worked with me before. At the end of last summer, I met a student that was writing a web scraper that was taking a screenshot of every one of my slides and downloading it. And I was like, that's interesting. I wouldn't have thought to do that. I've added a table of contents. Can you see that okay? No one really uses any of these tools, but there is a PDF export mode here. I don't know what that did. Probably something. So maybe this works well for you if you're into that. And notice the table of contents does not exist in the PDF version. Oh no, I misspelled it. I added a home link. So I got coffee with Professor Hank Eibser, who you all know, and I was showing him my slides, and he could not get back to the home page when I showed him any of my slides. And I was like, that's a me problem. There's a link now. There you go. You can escape at any time. You can check out any time you like, but you can never leave. Yeah? Okay, all right, yeah. I'll be here all semester, folks. Okay, that's it. Those are the only real changes, I think. There's one other mode I use, which is sometimes I'll use scroll mode by pressing R. And this basically feels the exact same to me, so I don't ever really use it. But if you like that, go ahead and switch back and forth. I am always interested in comments on making my teaching materials more accessible. So if you find something, please let me know. I am using a new form of technology this term that seems to work better. It didn't seem to work well on one student that only uses Linux's computer. And I was like, that's probably not my problem, right? Like if you use Linux recreationally, you can figure out how to style a markdown document, right? Okay, so if you use Linux recreationally, do not tell me there's a problem with my slides. Fix it, okay? Cool. Here's the agenda. We did the course overview kind of already. We're going to do the portions of the course overview that are on these slides now. I couldn't do a tour of how to get to these slides on these slides, right? That doesn't make sense. That's like a zero-order argument. We're going to review regression. I'm thinking, like, it depends on how you think about this, right? I was just talking to some of the undergraduates. Can I get some boos for the undergraduates? Boo, boo. Yeah, that's what I thought. So I was talking to some undergraduates, right? And they were like, what are you teaching today? And I was like, well, on paper, machine learning, but it feels an awful lot to me like I'm teaching interaction models, that's statistics, I think. Does anyone know what statistics is in here? Okay, that interaction models is statistics. Anyways, it sure felt to me like I was teaching statistics. I was like, that's kind of suspicious. To me, it feels an awful lot like we're using 4 weeks of really digging into linear models to motivate what machine learning is and how we think about that. And there's different ways to get into machine learning. That's how it looks like to me what we're doing. So that's the review of regression begins that process. On here it says dinner break, which there's no way we want to do that. We're just going to lecture straight through that.
Oh.
That was a joke. Can I get a boo for skipping dinner?
I was prepared just to like have a revolution. Like 7 years
I think there's more of you than me.
Yeah, so it was like easy.
But like that could be. I say that with a certain confidence level, right? But I'm not absolutely certain, right? Because maybe it's a measurement error. Okay. Then we're going to do a little bit of a talk on classification, something that's called ethics. This is another case that's sort of interesting to think about words. Because I thought what this example was about how to do classification correctly. You could argue that to do something ethically, you have to not be so bad at it that you cause a Civil Rights Act violation, right? And I think that's separate from what, oh, I can't pick on Meta because they're actually in the news. I always pick on them, and now people are actually mad at them. But like, so I think like Facebook does unethical things on purpose, right? And those are different considerations. So I'm assuming you learned about that all last semester, and I don't have to talk about it. Then we're going to do a little bit of feature engineering, which gets awfully close to Wrangling. Do you have a question?
Don't want to detract too much.
Yeah.
Some of us are part-time and did not take ethics last semester.
That is good to know. Thank you. I didn't take it either, so we'll find out. If I say something that... So I taught an undergraduate version. I don't know how similar it is. So if we start talking about things that don't make sense, please just let me know. Is that okay? Cool. Thank you. And that'll be good for all of us to review as well. Then we're going to introduce some vocabulary specifically on the precision recall trade-off. So we're going to introduce those vocabulary words. And right up at 10 o'clock, I'm going to make you do some algebra. Okay. 5 homework assignments, weekly. 3 modeling projects, bi-weekly, terminating with the final. 5n plus 3/2n equals, never mind, it's 11, right? So that gets us to 11 weeks. We also have a midterm in there and a final. That puts us up to 12 weeks, right? So there's roughly a homework assignment every week at an every 2 weeks cadence once we get into the modeling project. There is an exam. It is a midterm exam. I feel like if you don't give any exams, like it doesn't feel like a real class, right? Like really, I'm giving you the exam as a favor to you. So when you show up for exam day, I expect like flowers, thank you cards, maybe a box of chocolates. And if that stuff doesn't come, that's okay. But I just want you to know that that's where the bar is set, right? Okay. Course policies and my expectations for you. I think I actually interviewed someone else for another role a couple weeks ago, months maybe. And this person was a Julia programmer. Do y'all know what Julia is? It's a language for scientific computing, right? And there's 2 other languages for scientific computing, R and Python. And then there's this thing called MATLAB that we try not to talk about because it costs money, right? So try to avoid MATLAB if you can. But anyways, I was talking to this person about Julia, and I was like, So you're a Julia programmer. I bet you really like Quarto Markdown documents. Because everyone loves R Markdown, right? Can I get some loud cheers for R Markdown? Brandon, I saw you not cheer. Sorry, I didn't mean to call out an individual. That was involuntary. I can apologize and acknowledge I made a mistake. You can call me out whenever you get one free call out on me. Is it? That's that. We can trade. Okay, thank you.
Per hour or per session?
Grayson, I didn't give you a call out card, right? Like, okay. I think I'm gonna put down in my notes that Grayson's causing me problems. Okay, yeah. I would love you all to learn to love Quarto Markdown as much as I do. Here's the pitch for Quarto Markdown. For a large number of years, I've been writing Python code and saving it in .py files and sending it to my friends and being like, hey, look at this cool code I wrote. And it was, I think, what the kids call uggo. Like, it looked bad, right? And then I was like, what if instead of this looking bad, it looked good? And that's when I discovered Quarto Markdown, where I think someone that took Data 502 and like maybe one other class too about like fonts or something was like, what if we made it so that our Markdown documents looked really, really good when you render them directly for HTML? This is a default Quarto theme, and it looks great. That's why I started using it, because I have no sense of design at all. I did overrule all of the settings to get fonts that I could read, so if it looks ugly to you, that's my fault. But I was stunned how good this looked. It supports embedded LaTeX, and you can run Python, R, and Julia in it. And if you really know how to cook, you can run CUDA C++ in it, but we'll save that for later, right? That's like a special amuse-bouche for like the next term. Okay. So I would love you to like just fool around a little bit with Quarto Markdown, sort of like engage with it the way I engage with like a crossword puzzle or something. See if you can get a sense for it, see if you can like it. A version ships by default with RStudio. There is support for Quarto Markdown documents on Posit Cloud. I couldn't get it to work easily, so I don't know if it works well. But just try it out. And then I'm giving you a 1-hour video lecture on setting it up in VS Code over King Day. So try those things out, see what you think. I think that's the future. We'll find out in the future, right? But good skill to learn. HTML is not the future. It's been the only way anything's communicated for a gazillion years. The thing that won me over to really indexing into teaching HTML, and some of you took data ethics from me in the past 2 years where I teach a lot of HTML in that class, because I think it's the best way to communicate that we have. I do think it's better than Markdown, even though it's more tedious to write, is arXiv. When I was a full-time researcher, I published all of my papers on arXiv so that other people could read them. And in fact, other people did read them and cite them, and it accelerated the scientific process, I think. So I feel good about that. arXiv is a project I believe in. About 2.5 years ago, arXiv accepted one other format than PDF finally for the first time ever. And that format is HTML. And the thing that had me holding out on HTML is I was like, well, people don't use it for academic, technical, or scientific writing. And that's like sort of what I do. It's for like making Amazon and like selling stuff, or like making a restaurant website, or Squarespace, right? When I saw arXiv started accepting papers in HTML in December 21, 2023, which is 374 days ago, I was like, I have to do that too, right? So that's the justification for specifically requiring HTML for this class. I would like you to publish them on GitHub pages, send them to me on your Willamette, and maybe post them on your LinkedIn. You're welcome to use R or Python. I will assume you're using R unless I hear otherwise, but it is unlikely to me while I'm looking at your code, I will know which language I'm looking at. I do not perceive a difference. Midterm exam, there is nothing I can say to you to convince you you should not be stressed out about the midterm. So I'm not going to try. Should I have tried? Is something noble if you try and fail, or do you have to actually succeed to get the noble points? It's worth thinking about, right? Or is it? We don't know, right? Okay. Three-part group project, we'll get there. Why does it say we'll get there? I am using the patented Jamison-Watts TM curriculum. And there are references in this curriculum, which looks pretty interesting and appealing to me, to RDB files that I do not have. Which means that we might get to do the modeling project on a data set that I like. Which means I don't know exactly what form it will take. I know what the data set would be if we do my data set. And I know what the data set would be if I do the patented Jamison-Watts TM data set, right? So the reason we have we'll get there in there is this intersects with two things. You remember this trick? It intersects with how much time we spend on LLMs, and it intersects with what our data set of choice is. I am not alone in making this decision. We're staying synchronized with our Portland friends, taught by Professor Hendrik Oram. And so we reserve the right up through the midterm to make some design decisions that affect the modeling project, but there will be a modeling project. So look forward to that. I'm going to use a pointer for course policies. Do not do anything you wouldn't do in 501, 502, or 504 unless that thing is using LLM, in which case I don't care. I think it probably, I don't know what you would have done in 501 if you used an LLM for the homework, because I think at least a certain distance into that course, the LLMs could just do it for free. And then at some point, they probably exploded and couldn't do anything. I don't know. I don't know if any of you tried it. It's definitely reasonable to use them now because the focus of this course is not on learning to write code. It is on machine learning, and LLMs are not going to make decisions for you. Or if they do, they're not going to do a good job. So we're fine now. I taught the class called College Colloquium twice. And both times, after the first few days of class, the students had a class with their colloquium associate, who's another more senior student. And that student had the students in the class get together and decide on what appropriate conduct was for the class. And one year they decided they were allowed to use potty mouth bad words, apparently in a 16-1 vote. And in another year they decided they weren't, apparently also in a, I think, 13-1 vote that year. And I do not care at all, but you all have to do the same thing as each other. But you also have been taking classes with each other to some degree, right? So I'm going to trust you in a 500 level class to do the things you're supposed to do. This puts me in the slight risk if one of you starts doing something sketchy, I don't have a specific rule I can point to that says don't do that. That is all. So I guess I'm showing how I am vulnerable. Let's move on. My background, I don't know what the nice way to say I'm a failed mathematician is. So I was an undergrad, as many of you were at one point in your life, and I went to meet with the chair of the math department. I was like, I want to go to grad school. And I heard a response that was something between, that's too bad, and, well, you could do applied mathematics, which I think is the same thing as no. Not to worry, I had also been studying computer science for fun. And now I still study computer science for fun. So I'm a computer scientist. Large amounts of the things I was doing are now considered data science, as has happened to many computer scientists. Many of the things I do are definitely not considered data science. And I have no perception for the difference between these two things. So if I stand up here and start talking about Alonzo Church's lambda calculus, I don't know that's not data science, but you all do, right? And if I stand up here and start talking about gradient descent, right, that's just data science, right? That's the machine learning methods, right? So I'm going to ask for a little bit of your patience on, I might start accidentally teaching computer science for a while, and then one of you will have to start doing this, really comically and over the toply, right? And then I'll be like, oh, I should do more of this, right? So that's going to happen a few times, just asking for your patience and understanding on that. I've looked over the course material. It looks like stuff that's extremely my jam, but that's not always good, because sometimes I then go on tangents. Okay. I have already met all of you, But what I would like you to do is a quick think, pair, share. I've been monologuing for 42 minutes without breathing, actually. I took one really big breath before I came into the classroom. So I think you all know each other, but I'm not sure. Why don't you pair up and talk a little bit about your background and your goals for the course, and I'm going to walk around and try and listen to what every single one of you says very quickly. To organize your thoughts, one of the things I would like you to talk about, if you don't know what you should be talking about, is what are the aims of a master's level education? Okay, ready, go.
Yeah, I think I would.
I drive from the city, which is easily far away. Milk City. It's South
Although I live right in Salem, so. But I guess, yeah, in general, I just want to get good stuff that I can I search up a lot of things which makes me feel impossible.
same here. Because I can't figure out a small issue.
Make stuff like that. What
the purposes of we also asked his overall background I do not. I do not have like one of those systems. Talked about one of the like
That's what I did. But you should know. Yes. What you call it?
That's awesome. It looks great.
I just
I was like, yeah, he's like, text her, like, assuming time, like, turns out, like, we're full of items, like, different categories, whatever. It's like, the choice between items and stations for your it was, not like that. Just like, you just give like a really broad example of how you use it. I was kind of tomorrow. Oh yeah. It was like
All right, students, welcome back to lecture. My favorite style of learning because I get to talk and you have to listen. My family, whom I love, says, "Of course you're a professor. You always want to talk and not listen." And I said, "Sorry, I couldn't hear you over the sound of my own voice." Let's learn about machine learning. What is a data scientist? So I'm going to tell you how I learned about the term data scientist, which is that it was 2000, and I was interviewing for this job, and they said, "What do you think about data science?" And I started a very long sentence, and when I reached the end of the sentence, I'd Googled the job description for a data scientist at Microsoft up in Redmond. And that description of data scientist was the exact same as back-end web developer. There were people that used SQL to populate data-driven websites. And so that's what I said, and they still hired me, which means it's true. Machine learning is differentiated to me from other forms of programming, which is my framework as a computer scientist, in that it is non-deterministic. If I give you 10,000 data points and ask each one of you separately to construct a least squares line, you will all get the same intercept and coefficient. If I ask you to construct a model to predict the 101th data point, you could all get different answers, and it would be difficult to determine the correctness of those without additional data. That is the difference. Probabilistically, and from a statistics framework, this is quite easy to understand, right? In the distribution of possible answers to the question, we are going to determine the most performant solution, given certain considerations about the data, right? So the statisticians had a ready, built-in way to understand this problem that was closely mimicking my understanding from sort of the notion of non-determinism. There's a universe of possible futures in each case, and we are going to try and select, in my view, the best possible future. Skipping to bullet point 4, it was significant to me that when I looked at this course curriculum, began to teach it and began to study it and look up, sort of supplementary material, I had to check some of my statistics knowledge background, Many of the resources I found were referring to statistical learning. The provided textbook is Introduction to Statistical Learning. As far as I can tell, statistical learning is the subset of machine learning that can be done under the auspices of formal mathematics from the statistical framework, and generally speaking does not incorporate neural networks. One of the reasons to not include neural networks in statistical learning is no one is sure why they work, and therefore I would argue if they work, they just seem like they work. If I clicked back on this slide a few times, you'd see that in my PhD research over in computer science land, I did formal methods, which means a lot of what I was doing was proving that neural networks don't work. So I have been historically a neural network skeptic for that reason. On the flip side, neural networks are just linear algebra, and we know that works, right? So I am thinking that I'm mostly teaching you the overlap or the intersection of the sets of machine learning and statistical learning, right? And so you'd be welcome to think of yourself as learning machine learning or statistical learning until we get to the deep learning section. If you want a really tongue-in-cheek or flip answer, it is statistical learning if it is in R, and it is machine learning if it is in Python, and that is a good enough working definition to go with, right? The inherent design features of the language are significant enough in terms of what is happening formally that it does constitute a change in theme. So I think that's reasonable. Econometrics, I really strongly associate specifically with one method, which is the multiple regression. So if you are doing a multiple regression, in addition to doing machine learning and statistical learning, which I think of as a subset of statistics, you are also doing econometrics at that moment. I do not have a strong sense for how much econometrics has expanded since I took the class in 2013, but my understanding is there was a pretty sharp break between data science and econometrics very early on, and all of the post-2013 methods have been classified as data science, so all of that stuff is yours. The role of judgment in machine learning comes into the notion of whenever we're doing these statistical notions of perhaps prediction, we're making judgments about what type of data set we have and what we expect about our current data set to exist in future or unobserved data sets. The difference between, I think, machine learning and deterministic descriptive statistics, there is no apolitical machine learning. You inherently must make some assumptions at some point in time, including making no assumptions, right? Accepting the status quo or assuming neutrality is inherently, and I say political in sort of like the liberal arts sense of like, if your method of machine learning is used to distribute resources, you have performed politics or economics in some way. And if you make any assumption or absence of any assumption at all, it changes the outcome and therefore the distribution, right? So this is the shift, and this is why there will be some discussion of ethics in this course, from describing what is to predicting what could be or deciding what could be, right? And I think that's cool. This also gets to the notion that is not necessarily present in descriptive statistics, so the data 501 form of statistics, right? Oftentimes it is enough to describe what it is with correlation. It is insufficient to find correlation in a predictive model, because whether that correlation is significant or not is not a mathematical measure of the least squares or R squared, but it is a measure of your confidence in the general applicability of the data set you are considering, right? And so when we additionally have to think about the background behind our data set and what predictions will be made in the future, that is when, even if we find something that we are confident in its correlation, we do not know if it generalizes. And we will look at some examples of that today. Let's look at some code. I have no idea what language this is, but it says tidyverse, so I'm going to assume it's R. I do not know what you use for your package manager. Please tell me if you're opinionated. What I think I have done is I have given you a link on the course webpage to a .qmb document that if you click on it, it will download. And then if you click on it in your local file system, it will open in already the program of your choice. I also got these into Posit Cloud, but I went through GitHub. So I think there's a way to get these in Posit Cloud. If you just get in them and you click Run All, everything will pop up. I should let you know that there are some spoilers in here. So maybe don't look too far ahead if you don't want to spoil yourself. I also don't know language conventions. My preference as the type of programmer I am is to include all of my packages as early as possible in my documents. So this is every package we use today. This package is scheduled for usage after dinner. So you will not use it immediately. It contains a data set we will use, and I don't believe anything else. I am, how do I want to say this? I have a strong animosity to running a script on my computer and it popping up a box asking me what I want to do. So I wrote a little bit of R up here to determine what my default CRAN installation is. There could be a better way to do that, but that's how I got my box popping up asking me if I wanted to install this from US Oregon number 70 or anywhere else. Is this how you all install packages? Okay. It works great. Though also, I set this device up today, yesterday, while I was babysitting, so there was like a physical, actual existing human baby like mashing my keyboard, and it took very long to set up, and I don't know if it was me or the baby. So it could take a while to set all this up, I don't know. Can I get a shout out to babies? No, you were a baby once.
I regret it.
I'm not going to say so do we all, right? I didn't say it. So do not put in the course of owls that I said so do we all, okay? I make lots of course of owl jokes. Just don't read anything into it. It's just who I am as a person. Okay. After we install the libraries on our local device, we include them with library. This color right here is that color. I don't know how it shows up on the slides. I tried to get my ggplots to blend in with my slide background, so that's what I'm using Chromatic for. For the entirety of the semester, we are going to use the wine data set, which is not named after people whining. Well, sometimes you got to do it for yourself, even if you don't think it'll really do well with the audience. The wine data set is in a gazillion different places. Here's the link, and I think this is going to automatically start downloading. There it is. It's big, 43.7 megabytes. I suspect if you all try and download it right now, our Wi-Fi will be very, very sad. I literally download it in the script every single time I run it because I was too lazy to find it on my local file system. I love how fast the internet is in 2025. I just don't even check. It's great. So I believe if I take this code right here and just run it anywhere, where should I run it? Colab. Are you all Colab appreciators? This is Google Colab. The way Google Colab works is, I can never understand why Colab exists. Google is trying to sell their cloud services to everyone, so this is an interface they developed for their cloud services. I can say I want to put some code in here. I can copy paste that. It defaults to Python, I think. No problem. We can change it to R. If you're really into machine learning, there's these things called TPUs, which stands for Tensor Processing Unit, and only Google knows what they are. There is only one way I can run code on a TPU that I'm aware of, and it's in a Google Colab document. And that's pretty weird. There is also a chip called the Inferentia that is owned by Amazon. And no one knows how those work either. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Professor Calvin, there's $3 trillion cloud providers. There's no way exactly Amazon and Google have a secret chip no one has ever heard of, and Google and Microsoft, third one, Azure, doesn't. No, Azure definitely has a secret chip, but we don't even know what that one's called. But we know it's made in Beaverton. I don't know what it does, right? And so basically none of these cloud providers can afford to buy as many chips from NVIDIA, who makes the graphics processing units, as they want. So they started making their own that are cheaper, but not quite as high performance, which means I can use this for free. I'm going to use a CPU because this is not actually a computer architecture class. None of you called me out. I started talking about computer science. You failed your first test. Okay, I think this is an R runtime. I have to, oh, I'm not signed in? Oh, I was sure I was signed in. Oh, I am signed in. It just doesn't believe me. How many characters is that password? Quick, did anyone count? Yeah, it's Calvin Deutschmann. You just try logging in, but I'll get a text. We'll make a new notebook. That explains why it popped up the like, hey, I'm Colablish. Okay. Oh, and it changed the runtime type. This is a new one. Ooh, look, I got access to another TPU. You'll notice that the GPUs are not necessarily available for free. Do you all like these R language pipes? That I was trying to decide what I thought about them, and then I got distracted by a Subway Surfer TikTok. I think I don't have tidyverse in here. Okay. I have a plan, don't worry. I'm sure this is going to work eventually. There it is. Okay. So the source of this digression is I wanted to show you that you can run R code with a Google account anywhere. And if you have questions about it, you can ask the summation of pirated human knowledge that Google does not have legal access to, but nevertheless has access to. And blah, blah, blah. So I believe if you take that Quarto Markdown document and you throw it in Google Colab, it'll work. Okay. I think there's 90,000 entries. No, more, many more. 130,000 entries. I didn't look at what all of the headings were offhand, but you can poke around at this data set and do whatever you want. The way I think of it is there exists wine for which there exists a human critic that gave the wine a number between 80 and 100. And separately, there exists an invisible hand of the free market that gave the wine some price. And these processes are similar but distinct, and we can learn much by studying them. So, can everyone get this working, or does anyone need tech support help? You all know how to get R to run, right? Okay. There exists a region, I believe it's called a province, in a little country in Europe that I like to call France. Lots of people call it other things. I call it France. Can I hear it for Francophiles?
No.
Really? Not fans of France in here?
No.
It's because Macron's government is gridlocked. I understand.
No, it's because France people are rude. And racist. Look, I went to France. I got insulted every day I was there. I'm not taking it. And Kendall's right. I'm going to say one thing. Aren't Americans also racist? Okay. So we picked the poshest province, which is Bordeaux.
Just kidding, it's Bordeaux, right? That's Bordeaux. I met someone that worked for a company called Galois, Galois, and I was calling this thing Galois, which I already thought was posh enough, right? I completely clowned myself. Okay, so if I just want to look at the Bordeaux region, we mutate. And what does this mutation do? Actually, I should make one of you describe this. I need a volunteer. Oh, come on. There's like 30 of you. One of you will volunteer at high probability. It's like the birthday paradox. It's not. It's not related to the birthday paradox at all. That was okay. Okay. In data 501 and 502, do they cold call? No? Okay, then I will not cold call, because we have the same expectations as 501 and 502. Thank you. Okay. Oh, wait, did you raise your hand?
Yes.
In 501 or 502, what I call on you?
I don't know. Probably.
Oh, okay, at high probability. Okay, what does mutate do?
So first, for inside the parentheses, province is equal to Bordeaux. I think that's basically setting true or false, creating a true or false variable called Bordeaux.
Okay.
Sorry, creating a column called Bordeaux with true or false values, whether the province is equal to Bordeaux.
Okay. Kendall, you were raising your hand. Do you have a?
No, that would.
Okay. Yes. I would use one vocabulary word here that I did not hear, which is that, or maybe a combination of vocabulary words. Given a data frame, create a new column with heading Bordeaux. All elements of the column are of type Boolean, or true-false, and the true-false value encodes whether or not the province is equal to Bordeaux, which is what Herde said, and it introduced the terms column and data frame. I believe we know what columns and data frames are. So I have some data frame with 130K entries. One of the headings is province. Some of the entries in province are Bordeaux. Some of them are Oregon. Some of them are other regions, but the only two regions I know of are Bordeaux and Oregon, right? Come on, that's kind of funny too, right? Like me not knowing the existence of Washington, that's like a humorous thing to imagine. Okay, so we have the province. We select those provinces for which the region is Bordeaux. We name them true. And then we are going to use drop NA. As far as I can tell, a huge part of data science is just like, if the data doesn't work, you just stop looking at it. Let's move on before I get called out for that. Okay. This is an LM, a linear model. I made a little data analysis for the statistics PhDs in my faculty Discord. I do hang out with your other teachers. And I said, good thing every model is linear, and then I walked into class, and I don't know what they're saying about me right now. It's you know, I am the spice of life, right? Okay, so we have a linear model. We are going to take price tilde points. That type of thing is a formula in R. In Python, those do also exist. They are implemented by the library PatZ, and they're usually used in the stats models universe of things. But you can write a formula or a PatZ formula in either language. I specify my data frame. Instead of specifying that data frame, I could have, of course, used the % sign greater than % sign pipe operator, right? Most of the code in this slide I have left as it was bequeathed to me by a data scientist. There's just a little bit where I had to get a little computer sciencey with it, right? So try not to overdo that. And here's our regression table. Picture's worth 1,000 words. That does not look like a linear model to me. Let's take a look at not just the regression of price to points. but the regression of price to points and Bordeaux-ness, the essence of whether something is from Bordeaux. What is the difference here? Ooh, oh, can I get a volunteer for this one? What type of linear model is this? I'll give you a hint. I posted a bonus content about this to the Discord before class today. I gotta be fresh with y'all. I could not figure out what type of model this was. So I went to do what I thought would generate this, and I got this thing. I was kind of hoping one of you could explain to me what's going on here. I figured out the mathematics, and I don't know what it means. This is a statistical interaction, and I was kind of assuming you all learned this. It's the difference between these two things. I don't know what this D term is, but that is a set cross another set, right? What it looked like to me, why do I not have Discord open? Oh, am I in Applied ML?
You put it in the advanced reasoning.
That's totally a different thing, but thank you. There's extra credit in there. Calvin, what does extra credit mean when there's no grades? Just do it. Okay. I was looking at our course enrollment this morning, like as a department. Okay. Why did I look at this? There is 11 data points up here. What is the benefit of looking at 11 data points? I can understand all of them. I know someone in all of these classes. You don't have to know someone in all of these classes. If you see a statistic model you don't understand, I recommend picking 10 data points you know and figuring it out. I am a computer scientist and data scientist at the same time. And so I teach computer science and data science classes. I looked at enrollments for computer science and data science classes versus the number of prerequisites. Usually you expect somewhere between, I don't know, 1/3 and 2/3 of a class to continue on to the next class in the major. Right, so we have a weak downward slope from classes with 0, 1, and 2 prerequisites. And data science and computer science classes did not follow the same pattern the same way because 100 million people take Data 151, our intro data science class at this university, right? Anyways, I did what I assumed the first model was, which I was like, that is clearly a set partition. So I take all of the data that is from Bordeaux and all of the data that is from not Bordeaux. And I do a least squares line over both of them. And then I graph both of the least squares lines on one graph. And you get exactly this. You can review my code. And you do not get this thing, which is what I assumed the plus meant. And what that means is I do not know what this does, because I assumed you would do something extra to that based on the fact there's other data. And I cannot figure out what the extra thing is. So if one of you figure this out, post it in Discord and I'll give you some extra credit. You also have to figure it out before me, so you do not have very long. Unless I get distracted by something, right? This sort of difference here, two lines very close to each other from doing points plus Bordeaux, and two lines that intersect each other and have different start and end points, different intersections from points cross Bordeaux. That is the difference between an interaction and a non-interaction model. If we are thinking specifically about predictive statistics, I suspect we want this one in many cases because that line should be following something more closely if they're further apart. And the thing it should be following more closely is what would happen if all lines were just from the Bordeaux region. Does it make sense how I figured that out by testing on a data set I was familiar with? To me, this is the essence of linear models. I believe the Jamison-Watts trademark curriculum. Jamison-Watts understood this data set the way I understand, and don't make fun of me for being a huge nerd, undergraduate enrollment in computing and information science. Oh gosh, that's what I do for fun, okay? Right? I was gonna look at grad enrollment. There's not enough of you. There's only like 3 classes. I already got a warning. I got in big trouble from Python NR for my data set not having at least 20 elements in it. I was like, I only got 11. Sorry. What's going on here? These things are quite similar. So I look at root, mean, square, error. Quite similar across the 3 models. R squared is close enough, but I don't know. That's pretty different from there. None of these models are great, and you can do a lot of things, but I would encourage you to look at this and say, that line is not modeling that data set. Moving to an ML framework means taking this data set and not just describing it, but predicting it. Why do I want to do this? I'm going to look at my watch. This is not true. I'm going to lie. I am the owner of White Rose Estates in Dundee Hills, just in between Newburgh and McMinnville in Oregon. My wines have been scoring 94 and 95 on Wine Enthusiast for 6 to 12 years, and the changes to the climate are suggesting that Pinot Noirs in this region will continue to grow more performant for the next 25 years. I want to predict how much money I will have to spend over time so I can invest it in my vineyard and become one of the more competitive vineyards in the region, specifically competing with most likely Archery Summit in that area. So, if you would like to work for White Rose Estate when you graduate, you want to predict how much those wines are going to sell for, right? You can't do that with this. This just tells you how much they would cost today. It tells you how much they cost here today. It doesn't tell you what Pinot Noirs sell for in regions that are like what Oregon will be like in 20 years. We have to move past descriptive statistics. I'm not sponsored by White Rose Estate. So do not put in the course evals I am sponsored by White Rose Estate. Okay. We introduced a new library here. I want to say this verbally, and I've put it in the slide header. Create data partition does not work unless you include the caret library. I don't know why it's called caret. I do not care at all. I gotta make sure I don't use all my best material in the first, right? Okay. So, create data partition is caret. Caret is a machine learning library. If you look up caret, you'll most likely find something published using R Bookdown, which is what people had to use before Quarto books existed. There's a really nice online textbook about caret. What does caret do? This is the thing I care about, which it is going to slice and dice up your data set, and it's going to put 80% of it in one place and 20% of it in the other. Intuitively, do you expect to put 80% of your data in the training set or in the testing set?
Training?
I heard 2 trainings and then 1 testing, but I don't know who said them. Though I was staring at Ryan, so I think it was like this voicing thing. Who said, was there a voice over here? Rise and be recognized? Was that you?
No, I didn't say that, but I was going to answer.
Okay, well, just answer then.
I was going to say 80% training if for smaller data sets.
Okay. So I can train more.
When
Progressive overload. Get on that grind. Stack pound 4,000 protein calories. Hit the electrolyte mass gainer after going to the gym. I went to the gym before I came here, by the way. That's why I'm like this. Okay. It was awful. Okay. So we split up our training and testing data set. We put 80% in training. And we do that because the fitness influencers we follow on, I was going to say LinkedIn. I don't follow fitness influencers on LinkedIn, but I'm realizing now I should, right? The fitness influencers I follow on LinkedIn tell me that I need to rise and grind, okay? And then we just look at the test data set here. The test data set and the training data set will be indistinguishable, except one of them is bigger. I can take my same linear models, train them on the training data set, and this is where a little bit of the computer sciencing comes into play, is that the slides I inherited from a data scientist copied these 7 lines of code 3 times instead of writing one function. So I wrote a function. It maps getting the regression points, dropping the NAs, which we have to do just so we don't get errors, adding a column to the data frame with mutate that contains the square of the residuals which are generated from the regression points from the drop NA. Then, over that data frame, we compute the root mean square error by computing the mean of the residuals, the squared residuals that we just added, and then taking the square root of that. I don't know what pluck does, but I think it makes a tibble of the entries in the table that contains these 3 values, 36, 36, and 35, point something. I was truncating, not rounding. And these are the root mean square errors of the linear models trained over 80% of the data applied to the test data. Okay? And that's pretty cool. The relevant bits here that are popping out are this says training, that says test, and that is how we are developing a linear model on one data set, for example, all of the wine data until 2025, and using that to predict some future set, for example, what we think our wine is going to sell for in 2025, which we use to do things like make investments in our property and market. So someone, I don't want to say who it was, talked way too much, but I disclosed to you in advance that I was going to do that. So we have a 30-minute group exercise that we are going to do after dinner so that you don't all tar and feather me, which I think is what is common around here. I'm going to give you a dinner break that is the longer of 30 minutes or however long it takes me to walk to archive, buy a mocha, and walk back. So I'll see you all in about half an hour. It is cold out there. Oh no. No, I think that's right. It's all handled, right? Yeah. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah. The takeaway is
Maybe I'm ordering or yeah, you want to talk. No, I was just thinking about watt hours. That's yeah, no, I realized immediately after that conversation, I was like, I probably should have.
But yeah, that's all I want to say. We are all in trouble, and
yeah.
yeah.
I try to frame it as it was just a potential thing that floated that I took.
Yep. Don't worry about it. You all stay here. It's fine. But the archive is like 15 minutes away.
That's a lot of.
That is true.
No, I'm short of flip-flops, so.
So you have to move quickly.
It was cold just to get this.
Yeah. You gotta. Okay, if I'm not back, elect one of you to get through the rest of the slides. They're all right there.
There's no local news.
They like have to actually state it.
Yeah.
The name Frankie.
Because they have too much overlap.
You said Frankie.
I need 503 for my data. Yeah. Well, 503 for sorry, the data management last semester. But I wasn't sure and I didn't feel like it was unnecessary for
You know, that's why I don't bring it up, because we're going to.
It's from the Wizard of Oz. It's used there. See if it's on the Wikipedia.
Like the Wikipedia.
I guess technically it is. But it became one because of the Missouri laws. Yeah.
I thought you were just like, so, I don't know what you're driving now, but like, oh, this is so sad, you're just.
We didn't know we were getting them until we got here. And also like the photos that started moving the white background and they keep I'm like,
I took you from I have this like really funny set of pictures of psychology, just like the whole thing, because I'm really falling apart for this reason, to practice landing. And I have it done some custom covers and like designs and stuff, and I also have some old like pieces and then I have this on the end of it. And then just the actual cover, it's like a soft cover. But it's pretty simple. This one. I literally was so embarrassed. Every time I was posting that, I was like, I cannot be listening. But then every time I was posting somebody was like, I'm living for these. Keep posting it.
because I was really, you know what I did?
Oh, you know, it's not.
I just spread it in the entire kitchen.
Summer has
So many people being like, I'm like curious to listen to this. I even have different, like, especially in the holidays, and like, my parents are watching this with me, and I'm like, I know I just get bored too, so I just like choose the one.
That's the terrible route.
But that's not us saying.
And then you have to press the other key and trash it.
It's not. It's the right side.
That's great. Salt and burn.
Do you want to talk about any puzzle when there's the right equation on the board? You guys when you solve it. No, yeah. Yeah. No, I think that. Yes, that's the way. Probably. I mean, it's really what it is. I can't remember the name of it. Good. There you go. No, I would just say we should go.
Yeah, she got you're going
That's what I'm saying, is because you're adding on more every year. But yeah, I think the question is we could work on. So that's why.
So then
that they were going
And that ended up being the one.
That was locked. Yeah. Yeah. It's see red, and then they came with us in. Yeah, no, just tell you my copy. Yeah, I think she's fresh.
Oh.
I didn't like it. I didn't like that hair.
Fresh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do fresh. No, it's not. You're in. 5 seconds. 2 hours. I like your options.
Or maybe a super ugly bag. I also finished LD projects. Hey, you don't want to hear about my colors?
No, that's not. No? I mean,
I did.
I do. I'm going to do something. Tell me about it later. Scared to never put it in class. Great. No way left. That's why it is. Call up to walk you around. Did you see Kubarsi's Who? Kubarsi's had the that comes off. I was watching it and I was just having this going to be crossing it for like 4-yard drive. What was that?
branch, so. Yeah. Yeah, they're like, yeah, I'm closing the list of the banks. I was like, shit, okay. That means that if I don't find a job anywhere else in the company, then I'm getting separated. It's okay. It happens. It's kind of funny. It does when the boss that retired, he wants to go to his job. He wanted to do my job, but he didn't want to do his job. He was to go out and try to make sure that more turns. And it's like saying, hey, regular consumers are going to get into their job. It's not he was looking at Alien, and it was like, okay, well, you realize that not what I'm going to know, but I get it. So it is what it is, I'm trying I'm hoping something bad goes up. They said it's something sure, they haven't made it, they opened it up internally. Because they wanted to get someone from the BI team, so they're back for it. So hopefully at the end of the month back again. So it'd be really nice if, it'd be really nice if I could do that, because there's overlap between that and my end date. So I would get the 7s, and I'd get to keep it because they would hire me back after. That's what I'm hoping. Is that nice? Yeah, it's kind of freaky. Right, but it was funny because there was I got some negatives. I've got one if I get back, I'm not looking forward to driving down to here from the walls. There's another interview right now. Well, I think it's out already. But I'm hoping there's one for this is saying not too much farther than most of them. But at the same time, I'm just hoping they would be really cool with me. Oh, so no, other places. So my branch is closing at the end of the month. That means that my position is going to be eliminated. There wasn't a lot of foot traffic. We weren't getting the pilots we weren't getting the workers that they wanted to see. But I kind of put it all on my old boss that retired. He retired 3 months ago.
She speaks Spanish.
And yeah. Well, I mean, not even that. They were watching it for 12 months. And I kept telling him it's getting kind of slow. So they're trying to offer more business.
She never really.
But he really just wanted to do my job, which was to stay back in the because his job was to go around and talk to businesses. And it's like, he didn't like that, so I was like, wow, whatever. And decided not to do it at all. And I was like, oh, so really we're not going to get a chance to play this around with him.
And we kind of just waited.
Yeah. I was thinking about this. If I don't find anything else internally, so then I'll come back and which is a reward issue. I'm hoping for something. So this is the same. There's going to be a lot between that and everything. So if I were to get that, they would give me my son's check, and then I'd have some contact someone. That'd be ideal. Yeah, no, 6 years. And then, okay, well, you know, they're gonna talk to me about this or whatever, and the year's coming, and they told, they gave me news that was happening, I was like,
No, yeah.
so I was.
Yeah, yeah,
all outside.
So that's gonna be the most my milk face out.
I don't know how to open those doors.
I know for a fact.
I don't think there's a way to open them without a key. I want that touch a little bit now. But I want yeah, I didn't know how to open that.
Yeah, no, I was just weird because I'm actually trying to get back in.
Oh.
It was after the back.
It's hard too, because I
That was
was
fun.
like,
Yeah, don't miss me.
I finally got one, like,
Okay.
and it's for just working. And now it's cool, it's like, they're starting to get back into work.
I was telling them, I've had interviews elsewhere, so had a phone interview with Chase, a phone interview with IQ.
But I'm gonna be.
They're opening for
I think it was,
I have an in-person interview on Thursday for Alpha Vegas Wall. But what's funny is all these other institutions I'm applying for, they're not ADM rules, they're branch group, so. Picking it up.
On every city.
I think it's cool.
I did a show before coming over, and it was like, and I was like, oh no, I don't know, it's good to want to put on socks. So we want to stay in my car to keep me up before I get home.
What other jobs are you looking at?
There's mostly just some other it's like
What do you?
so basically next year was if I can get accepted, they open up a non-assistant manager position. I'm just honestly some people figuring out they're short. We were all wanted to get up all six of us were over here with the call center and they were from the team. I had the cloud application class last semester, and I was like, yeah, I'll do the data cloud was basically my top 2 weeks of this change.
For me, I would have done the cloud, but it's money of those reflected with practice.
Like the whole class of people working on just one big project and get cloud out and getting pleasure of working for the pain. So it's done now, and I don't have to worry about it anymore.
And most of the same, 91.5.
I just decided to take some analysis instead.
It's a transaction.
Oh, sorry.
Did you do like an information interview?
So yeah, it was like it was a weird one between like just like casual and just some stuff. Yeah, it's like it was like kind of weird, like informational.
They were in my defense, they were hurting me then, and my residents wanted these ones, and so by the end of that, there were a bunch
Oh,
of
that's
them.
fun.
Freaking
Like
awesome.
libraries.
Yeah. That's true,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. It was like when I just came. I had
yeah, that's good.
Loki, I think I followed you on Instagram. I tried to contact you about it, but then I felt weird doing that out of the blue.
If you ever have any questions, let me just
Yeah.
by all means. Yeah, I remember that. Like, oh, you're gonna call me. Sure.
Yeah, no, I was breaking that night, so like, some project, like, what is the shiny that you worked on last night? How'd that kind of go?
Oh, good. Oh, good. Yeah. Basically, we had some issues towards the end, but like certain presentation was like show like them stuff that she was.
Yeah. I just saw you guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was something that was like, oh, a minor project needed, but we don't have time to do it, or if it was like, okay, this whole thing needs to be fully done.
Like the data set being as large as ours was pain. That's actually great class. They just sound like scary.
Essentially,
I think this
Okay, and I'm sorry if I but, like, what was like the pace for the interview? Like, how many questions in total, like, even if you don't remember a lot of them?
I think it was one question per whoever's in the call. It was they all had one main question they asked. The interview was like 25 minutes. You have to answer some questions. That's what it's down.
luckily,
Being shorter. I thought it was better because I was like, I can think of enough stuff to say, especially like when they try to ask me questions like something like I just just an hour. That's at least what I have. But that stuff stresses me out. But I thought it was good. I thought it was better, especially since I had questions. I think I took up like 7 minutes worth of questions. It was just kind of like, what do you really like about this job? Working at HB, what's like the work environment like, blah, 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 stuff like that.
So was it like each person had one technical question, and then every other were general questions?
Exactly.
There's only like 4 people. If you remember,
Science questions. What kind of libraries do you use? What do you use? Data analysis. The one How would you handle like,
Yeah. Okay, so it's easy. All right, students, welcome back. We were supposed to start a few minutes ago. Sorry, whatever. Are we? Surely that's wrong, right? I actually.
That one never works and it drives me insane.
I'm sorry about that. That was enough for me to lose my train of thought. Okay, so welcome back. I'm going to describe two sets of humans. The first set is a set of people that are comfortable getting up and moving around a little bit. And the second set is students whose the third letter of their first name is in the first half of the alphabet. You are on the intersection of those two sets. Get up and move around a little bit and find someone else to work with for this group exercise. One of the reasons to break up groups is you seem to have naturally clustered into R and Python. Bad. Because you don't know when you go into the job interview whether the hiring manager is going to ask for R or Python. So I'm going to force you to talk to people who are different from you, or perhaps from whom you are different, if I'm speaking without prepositions at the end of my sentences. So please do that. Start working on this group exercise, and in addition, if you run out of things to do, figure out the mathematical basis of the interaction term, unless you've already figured that out and spoken to me about it during the dinner break. Ready, go. If it's in the first half of the alphabet, you get up. This is why I was spelling all your names. I is in the first half.
Yeah. Is that the only condition?
And you're comfortable getting up.
Your first name, third letter.
Everyone wants stuff,
What?
Wait, do I have to make a custom timer?
Apparently I'm the only person whose name is the third letter of our first name.
It's getting a little suspicious, isn't it?
Load the one.
I don't have a chair.
Hold up.
I know.
Did I misspell my I?
I feel better.
G-R-A, racing.
Yeah. I've got my face messed up. So we
Makes it like, and then it has like physical pulling your data. I would have counted either way.
Wait, so I just wanted to.
Oh.
Right, because our classmates are all the same. Yes.
But I said I just, I think I pointed out because I was wrong.
So.
Of course I remember.
What exactly, this is my question. Okay.
Here's my thought on all of your discussions, we're going to stand up and just do both.
Yes, see, that's the solution.
I think N is
Makes sense to me.
visualize the relationship between points and price, just like the line graph. Hold up. I can do that.
I forgot.
What are the opposites
That's
in?
just
I'm expecting to not get up in news population is very high, and what I should have said is if you have letters in your name. Do you see how that can happen?
I moved pretty far. I was already moving before you said that.
I'll put that in a favorite sheet for you, and we'll see what comes out.
Uh-oh.
I know, probably.
I'm so proud of you though.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
The papers are gone. That's how we get things done.
I think so. Exactly, I think all the papers I would ask for are yeah. Like, I've never like, for like, so I don't actually know if I know how to do it, but I'm sure it's not that way. Like, I think at some point someone made a package in Python that's just ggplot. I thought I never actually used it, so I can't verify this information. No? I'm just a real Python.com.
What are you using for?
Yeah. I'm doing mine in person.
Oh.
I didn't make one that is on.
Python, I would say is my
My fault.
I used it for data. It was very helpful because
Are you doing this in art too?
I can do that.
Got it. Almost knocked my phone.
Nothing I can do. I would otherwise have to use a manual and use my brain.
I rubbed my eye and then all of a sudden everything was blurry.
And then I went to use
Grab
it.
a quick pen.
So, guess what? Every single library.
Why does it look like that?
Grab a quick pen.
That's why.
No, it's
What's
not.
it?
They were like, oh, I need it back to a DPU.
And then you put the line at the top.
QRT? So it's not void.
I finally
Got it.
Oh, you know what? You should do whatever you want. How about that? I feel like
You started the opposite way. I started with this, you started with professional. Which was original? I would have said prices.
I was just getting just try it.
It's misspelled for now.
I used to do it.
I can't fix it. Everything.
Susan.
I don't have Git install and I don't know where my Python is. I'll also do it.
Like the easiest way to think of it.
Color observation.
To visualize it.
Oh, I guess, oh, we're gonna have to make a second interview.
My problem is.
That might not be easy.
Okay, so we wanna read. We wanna make it with a
But I think you
line
can
or
work in your
whiteboard and line. Oh, yeah.
Oh, I would
What is right there?
I'm fine.
So to make this
we're at that point.
So I'm assuming, flying, and then gonna.
Which does, the first letter of the first name is in the first alphabet. So I think so you do vote.
Oh.
Oh, yeah, there was also a conditional of do you want to move or not.
Oh, well, that's because I said.
And I think most people decided that you can't, unless the name thing never.
Oh, I put
Well, like,
Well, that didn't help me.
Wow, that's a lot of points. So I made a second data set called Wine Board, which was just built into the province, and then I did Jam Point, and then another layer of Jam Point where data is equal to our Wine Board, and then
And I only use that for
my election.
I don't know if I know what you want, so.
I don't think. Actually,
That was.
okay.
So you think they would put something more, right?
Yeah.
I wonder if like, I wonder if it's because of doing it in a quarter or
Oh no, this many
I
tasters.
just moved this over to.
So Paul G wants.
Okay, we need some bright
tasting
colors
all
on
of
this.
this.
Let's
Let's
do
do
yellow.
but red. CK Fiona is only tasting Wine with Christina has only tasted 4 wines, so she's laughing.
This.
I like that better. It did the same thing. I did it as a part of my but it didn't like it. But when I did it in our script, it did the same thing.
Yes.
Well, that's my problem, isn't it? You know what? I erased my comment. Because I didn't want to do an R code.
Okay, we got non-board.
Oh, no, it didn't really.
So we just need another graph.
So maybe I just want to use the R. There we go.
But I think.
We're not going to do something.
You can do any category though.
Like a non-auto.
Like it doesn't have to be a category specific province, like you could do it, ones that scored a 8.96, do ones that are,
I'm gonna get like one
attached their name, based by a certain, this seems to be a lot like Roger Voss. Roger Voss.
It's just you saying.
I feel like I established like a negative precedent that I haven't solved. Like, it's still new. It's not like, yeah, but no one does. They can't help it, like,
training index to try to find patterns, and then the other small part of it to see if the patterns actually apply to stuff that wasn't in the data set. So you can see different models of behavior, like super overfitted data or underfitted. It's basically just like seeing if the model you made would be applicable to a wide variety of things that wouldn't have all together with that.
Yeah.
Yes, but it does what you're calling.
Oh dear God. Is that a regular geoline?
You want to be in one of
This is new. That's what I did. Yeah. When I did it, it's deep.
But to put it all in one, we can do it for nothing.
But I like this. I can actually see whatever it is.
Well, I was talking about the color.
Oh, the color, gotcha.
I don't know why it's that color. I'm fine with it. Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, I know that one. I was just literally wondering the color.
Yeah, like why the color? Yeah.
Because it's normally not.
It's a bit hard.
That's a lot of red.
It's kind of hard to do.
Why was I no
That's one.
So the reason I set this in up.
Never done it. Dating time.
Clear.
Oh.
Well,
Like,
I guess I knew it.
That's probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Really, really impressive.
Yeah. Nice.
Oh, okay. Not
Good work.
Oh, the thing that
in the geo.
Oh, yeah, so it is a pair of words.
I think I asked you. My LinkedIn says almost nothing. I think it says that I'm schooling. It might say I've done it. Yeah.
What's this?
Yes.
So, how would you rate your Python skills?
Ever to import.
Solid 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
There's
Enough to be worse on your skills.
Yeah, I think so.
Which is why I use Spark.
So everything else is
I stopped using it because my code.
Yeah.
And then just try like that.
Okay, I think
Whatever it is.
Just looking.
Oh,
I think I will see.
other one, and then I'm trying to change it for this one. Just trying to change the taster.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's why.
Yeah, that's why, because I don't know what a .rtls file is, but it just wants it to be
Indicator, so 0, 1.
What is a
And then just
.rtls?
add them together. That's what
Yeah.
I think so. Yes.
I have.
Yeah. If you look at like the models that I have in the slides,
That is.
and that tiny amount is 1. So like you just expect that every Bordeaux has an additional dollar is essentially what it is. And that's basically the same thing. It's not making any sense. The indicator variable is representing 0, 1, right? 0, 6 on the so that's what it was. And then the interaction term is using much more essentially scale. I just never assumed it would have a numerical value. Now it's that's why it looks so It's like, what if I just see something in Bordeaux 800 times, right? Like, these are the questions.
I can't spell. I think we've come to this conclusion. I'm not an English. Spelling is optional.
That's what I'm saying.
That's crazy.
Specifically, that's crazy. We do a lot of like.
Okay, I got.
Doesn't mean I can type.
I can't, but I know when the typing is wrong.
See, I can type, but I can never tell when it's wrong.
Okay.
I found an old code of mine where I managed to misspell like all different types, all different ways of spelling. Because I'm dyslexic.
Filter, what was it called, binary?
Do you do better with the anti-dyslexia?
Yeah, sometimes, but also like, I guess I've gotten so used to other, like just normal fonts because I didn't know I was dyslexic for a long time. I just thought it was normal. That sometimes when I use the like.
What are the Costco colors? It's blue and.
It distracts me because I'm like, that looks wrong.
Red, blue, and black.
But I
But
spelled
it's like
it.
it's a neutral blue.
Hold on.
And then I did,
Well, we need to Google Costco.
Yeah, that's an easy one.
yeah, and then I think I did,
Okay, so like,
yeah.
I feel like they're all very small.
Yeah, and so like to me, because I see that like line, like the line at the beginning. Yeah. Yeah, and so to me, it's like, it's very, these ones that, where was I, this one?
Those words.
Those 4 letters, my worst nightmare. Hate them. Hate those letters.
Oh, royal blue
You want
cord.
it?
Much
Here.
harder time with BD.
Bingo.
I just have always still
So the red is.
but like, remember when I
E?
was a kid?
It doesn't have the,
I
the
guess that
sign.
was a RAS.
E, 318, 37. And then for the,
0,
But I'm in my lazy.
2005.
yes?
D is. Sorry, you wanted to categorize this or you want?
Oh my god, we took points. Nice. Wait, taste one? That looks good. No. E, 31837.
Okay, so the blue.
The blues? Oh, no, it's the blue that's not working.
005.
Yeah.
Do
005
you need the, it's
not just pretty much. Go back up.
Well, I don't know. I found one of Royal Blue. I've always Yeah, it does. Yeah. No? Yeah. What do you say?
You can calculate the intercept. Doesn't matter.
The way I understood it, I assumed it was boxing with your blood with any weapon, but then I'm like, sorry, I think you were talking, I started talking about I wanted to draw a trend line.
He wanted to sit in the way that wasn't as
I gave up. I couldn't do it in either like. Okay, you figure it out. Make sure you get the code to me.
well, let's say we're trying to store this.
And I know a way to
I basically close a bunch of different
but
all the split old data was
because you can scale the prices
didn't have the problems that
to 0 to 1.
It's kind of, it uses a lot of resources. If you were to put this on like this, how it's going to work. Or if we were to put all the way to this.
So I
didn't say the wrong answer in my words.
Yeah.
Like it's like if I were to put it into I could authorize container
This one needs like
under the point. That's all my tail.
So then the point values are lost, so I have to relabel the axis. So I have to label 0 as 80, and 1 as 1. And then I have to make sure that it's historical box blocks on that axis and also the axis on this axis. And if I do all that, it's like, what would be 20 to 50 lines of code, depending on how precise you are. And every single line of code will be visible, and the end result will actually be wrong.
The colors are what the color of my line.
Yes, but there's many.
It's not changing.
So in aggregate, you have almost 30 minutes of work time.
Problem is that I'm not helping.
So they only have 25 minutes.
Because I'm trying to get it wrong in Python.
No, Jacob's trying to like cheat codes. That's what's going on with that.
I was trying to get ggplot to work in Python. Yeah. Okay. It just like it does work. I just think it's more simple. Let's go with this. Okay. It was just the first two that
You should say
Is it not? Maybe it's like Phil.
Yeah.
I think anything from.
mine is 37 years old.
Oh. Can you spell? Oh, here's the outline. Yeah, that's what I took from as well. Yeah.
Ready? Yes.
So much fun. Don't be asking questions all
Why
the
are you
time.
so? Why are you so?
This is cool. Why are you so questions?
I know. Well, I'm $0
It's
not actually 0, it's just really close to 0 because it's a very wide scale.
Oh.
the price.
I see. I see. Okay. Yeah.
from ggplot.
So from plot. Great. And
Well, I would probably say
Maybe I'll choose a different.
ggplot equals plot.
What would be so wrong about that? Okay.
Import plot line as ggplot from ggplot. That's the most correct.
I'm not doing that.
Don't come cry to me with your coworkers. We're going well. You figure out the
What are you guys trying to do?
Oh, no.
I got it wrong.
Plus versus.
I did it.
When I elected Immortal God Emperor,
Yeah, maybe not. Don't recommend that. But I think I'm also going to try.
Okay. I don't know.
But I think
Okay.
Or just clone yourself in.
This is what I just read.
Oh, no, it's not
really hard, right? Because minimally, even if you're doing the clone thing, you have to really get close. Everything is extremely high quality.
That's a good point.
Right, so like
The silicon storage is lower. Yeah, it's way lower storage.
that's what costs us.
That's a good point.
So
Well,
as
maybe
Immortal
you
God
should-
Emperor, I'll have to run the economy really, really well.
All you have to do is just say your new currency is worth $1 billion to 1.
Right.
Your currency is worth.
But I'm gonna have to pick the right number, so my deflation doesn't devalue
Yeah.
my majority share of the electorate.
That's true. That's true.
See, people think being a Democrat is really, there's a lot of things that
No, the higher
and that's not even.
Yeah. That doesn't seem like
What the heck? Okay, they're all on
It's almost running.
It's not.
Why is it blue? No, that's really yellow. Yeah. You're right. What about
This is what I said.
what about this one? This one is yellow. That one did not turn out well. Sorry.
I would never.
That's what I thought.
I've never laughed at you once.
That's even weirder. Wait, is it still making noise?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's check on our thing and make sure it's still working. Okay.
It's like 30 seconds from scratch.
I forgot one of the reasons that I don't record my lectures is because of how cringe they are. Like, we definitely high-key just took like a 30-minute dinner into a 30-minute exercise, and I like didn't say anything into the microphone the whole time. So if you're watching this later and you're like, what did we do in class? Remember you were working hard that whole time. Okay.
Yep.
Here's my code. I'm sorry. I apologize. I didn't full screen my slides. I don't know if that bothers you, but it bothers me. Okay. I'm guessing we felt pretty good about this one. One bit of narrative I want to do. Why did I do geom smooth? Naively, I did scatter. I'm guessing many of you did. There are 130,000 points. So while that was running, I opened up the documentation, read every single plot type in ggplots, selected a different one, loaded up an entire instance, and ran the entire code base, and this ran faster than the scatter plot. So that's why I'm using geom smooth, right? The takeaway there is I showed, like, and when I was doing this, like, at home by myself, I knew there was 130,000 points, right? And I was like, computers are fast, right? And then I like noticed the computer was slow, and I couldn't figure out why. So don't be like me. That's the takeaway here. Geom smooth. Okay, and the takeaway is not Geom smooth is correct, right? Listen to your people that know what they're supposed to use. I picked Geom smooth, and I think it looks great. It's not showing up, I think, particularly great on anything, but there is, in fact, a little bit of noise around this line, which probably represents something. This is the non-interaction model, right? We just split them up. Really high fan over here, I noticed. When I was looking at this plot, the first thing I noticed was, hey, these all start at 80. So when I was walking around the room, some of you heard from me that the scores range from 80 to 100. I had no idea when I first started looking at this, because when I looked at this, the only thing I saw is, hey, that's not a line. But this was pretty interesting, because when I saw this fanning out here, I was like, at exactly what point value does price versus points seem to tighten up? And then I realized, I don't know what you were thinking, right? But most likely what's going on is there's just a gazillion wines in here, and that's why the distribution is so high, right? I don't know. I was a little bit surprised, and I haven't actually run this data myself. I did not check how many wines there are at each price. Did anyone do that? Or at each point value? Did anyone check? Right, I feel like we should be curious about that, but I bamboozled myself into not checking. I don't know. It is possible there is 129,000 wines that scored 80. I didn't check. I don't know the best way to do this in R. This is the way I did it in R. The way I did it in Python on the Python slides is not my favorite way anymore, because I've been doing this in Python for approximately 9 days. So let me know if you find a way you like. But I took the data frame and I did a single mutation based on the prediction value of the linear model. I don't know if that makes sense to you. That's what I did. And then I just threw that thing into ggplots predictably. Does someone have a more clever way to do this that you'd be willing to share? Did you learn a different way than this? Is this what I'm? Can I get like a? Is this good? Is this good? This is good. Okay. The data scientists from whom I inherited this, one of them is also a Python programmer, so that doesn't help, right? One of them is an R person, and I only had the output. I had the visuals. I regenerated all my visuals because I wanted to make them myself. But I saw the graphs, but I don't know how they were generated. And so this is what I think I'm supposed to do, but I'm not absolutely positive. The other Python programmer, Hendrik Oram, who's teaching this class right now in Portland, get to know him sometime, really fun, thought an interesting thing to look at would be reserve. Hendrik Oram, I believe that's a Germanic last name, which I wouldn't know anything about. My last name's Deutschbein. Come on. Yeah, that was Deutschbein. It means Austria. Okay. Austria, of course, means east in German. Okay. I'm sorry, Grayson, this is not a language class. Okay. So, I did the same mutate thing. Hendrik Oram, Germanic last name, picked out the example of reserve, which is really interesting. I don't know how often you all get out to wineries around here. I do not necessarily associate reserve with higher or lower price or higher or lower quality. I associate it with usually year, like how old something is. And sometimes you have a bunch of wine from a year because it's good and you're saving it for money, and sometimes it's because you made too much wine that year, right? So it seemed like there wasn't a strong correlation. In fact, that is sort of what this looks like. I don't know what the takeaway from this is to be other than it doesn't seem like something being marked reserve scores higher or anything else. It does look like, I suspect what's happening is there's many fewer of these, so they cap out at 94, which is also I'm aware of, I think, 3 wines that have scored 95 in Oregon at all. So it's common for a region to not have a 95 or higher. We can do a few other things. We can ignore case, which I would not expect to matter. I didn't rerun it without that. And we can look at reserve in English, which is the most common language of one of the most performant wine regions, Napa Valley in California, right? But there are other hyper-performant wine regions, namely Bordeaux in France. I believe Reserva is the French term for reserve. I don't know for sure. Does someone know French wine? So actually, I do know what's going on. You don't just have to believe me because none of you are competing experts. That's definitely the French term. I know what I'm talking about. And we can combine both of them. We're still capping out, but we're now getting all the way up to what I'm assuming is 97. So by adding in the French regions with Reserva, and I'm not going to try and say that with a French inflection, I don't know French, we push it a bit further. And then what's the core insight? Who loves the Alps? That's right, no one. So we should cross them. And by crossing them, we can add Reserva, displacing the initial E for an I, which I believe is the Italian, but I could be wrong, spelling of reserve. And the Italians seem to place a high value on reserve wines, which suggests that despite these words looking quite similar to me, likely sharing a similar Latin root, they mean wildly divergent things in each of the 3 languages on display in these wine regions. I didn't even think often of Italy as a strong wine region. Obviously they are. They're cleaning up. They get tons of hundreds, right? I didn't know that, right? Which goes to show you what I know about Europe, I guess. I don't know. Anyways, look at the data. Don't just assume things. But it is very interesting that reserve and reserva are translations of the same word, except when applied to wine, when clearly they take on different meanings in a way that's actually measurable. This, to me, and I don't know if this jumped out at you. This is a linguistics result, right? There is something fundamentally different going on in the brain of a vintner that speaks Italian when they taste a wine and decide what to call it. That is extremely cool, and we can measure that with machine learning, right? Which means we can probably measure other linguistic features with machine learning as well, and perhaps generate ChatGPT. Now it's time for a dinner break. We're going to take 0 seconds for that. Okay, let's go into classification and ethics. I'm looking at my wrist. Okay. Oh, what a relief. We're only 45 minutes behind. I got to figure out who's in charge of this class. Okay. It's you all. Remember, you outnumber me. We discussed this. Okay. I had some thoughts about using this data set. And I guess the point of this exercise is to think critically about doing things, so we're going to go ahead with it. But do not assume people's sex based on their height, okay? I'm just going to say that up front, okay, right? That's bad. I'm not going to tell you why it's bad. If you would like to read something, I will send you a book. Okay, so we have a data set. Some interesting things about this data set. I looked into it a little bit. It's from DS Labs. DS Labs is one of the libraries we included at the beginning. I've made a little note here that this is from library DS Labs. I couldn't find a ton of documentation on it. I found the DS Labs library on CRAN, and it linked to what looked like a white paper describing this data set. This is self-reported data from a volunteer sample. Do those terms make sense to us? I use a different term to describe that type of data. I refer to it as cooked, right? So, like if we went on to, for example, a dating app and checked heights, I think we would not assume those heights are all correct. I think this is similar. But in a way, that just kind of makes it interesting, right? What does 71 mean to someone in English, right? I believe this was reported in English. So, do you remember way back in time when we did data partitions as the basis of the beginning of predictive analysis instead of descriptive analysis? Okay, so we're going to do that here. We're going to grab heights from DS Labs. I have to stop to breathe, sorry. Okay. Okay, so we're going to take, now we're going to take an x and y value. At this point in time, we are adopting the convention that I am accustomed to seeing in statistics of having, is it predictive and explanatory variables? Someone remind me of the terminology. I'm used to y. Is y the observed variable? Outcome variable? What is it? Explanatory and response? Okay. I'm used to independent and dependent, I think.
But I mean, all the stats classes I've taken kind of use those for interchangeably. Or use these two sets.
I probably should have reviewed that before teaching. Oh, neither here nor there, right? Okay. So, we have our x independent and y dependent variable, right? Or explanatory response, whatever. The reason I point this out is not like to make this a vocabulary quiz for something. When I see something like y and x, I assume that's following a social convention. And I would encourage you to think about it this way as well. So we're going to take the sex, the self-reported sex, right, and the self-reported height. It does not specify the heights in inches, but I'm pretty sure it is. I do wonder if there was like one toddler that filled this out in metric and we just don't know, right? But at least the min and max suggest this. I do think the probability of someone who was 7'1" filling this out seems unlikely to me. Out of 812 net plus 1,050 people, that seems unlikely, but I've been wrong before. I don't know the distribution of heights of humans. Anyways, you can look at the blah, 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 lots of things here. Okay. Oh, look, it's our book down. Okay. So, we step through the same things we did with the Vine data set. Oop, I'm trying to highlight this. One thing is different here. Last time I used create data partition, I set p equal to 0.8, and that split my data set into testing and training sets, where the training set was 80% of the size. How would I determine the breakage size of create data partition if I don't specify that? I need some way to look at this documentation. The reason I ask you this is so that you can think about it critically. I wrote this code in VS Code. In VS Code, which I might have open. Do I? I think if I mouse over this, it works sometimes. Maybe it doesn't. Oh, the language server is not attached. Okay, that's fun. I may need to reopen an R file. Okay. I'm a big fan of search engines, so we can use this in absence of something else working. I don't know your preferred way of checking this stuff out. I've been a really big fan of R documentation this past little time. The R documentation specifies, and this is built by someone that's like nice and cool or something, Data Lab, right? Oh, yeah, it's powered by DataCamp, right? You all have some opinion of DataCamp, at least. You're aware of it, right? Okay. So DataCamp provides this nice feature for us. And there are default values, as you are likely accustomed to in our functions. The default value here is 0.5. So when I don't specify, I get 0.5. And this also tells us why we're specifying list every time. By default, we would get back a list instead of a data frame. I don't know why that is. That's just how it is. And I think this is part of Caret, the machine learning library. So want to demystify all of those design decisions. I have too many tabs open. I'm going to close a bunch of tabs. That seems fine. Wait, I have two of the same tab open?
Yeah,
That's humiliating.
you opened a new thing this slide.
And you didn't call me out for it. You're so kind. Thank you. I wanted to point out the usage of y-hat here. To me, that looked quite odd. And I'm pretty sure you can just throw that y with this symbol. I think you can just put that in R. I think it's a Unicode character and it'll work in most languages. One of the things I also try and do, so you notice I put the very interesting characters in Unicode into Reserva for my variable name. I try and strike the balance between showing you that you can put like an emoji as a variable name and then also not writing code and putting it on slides that you can't type. And I want to show you you can do both of those things. The reason is I would like you to feel empowered to be able to like write code that is explanatory and communicative for you and also use code that other people wrote. At some point in my life, I started using code that was written in languages that had lots of special characters in it. And I didn't know it was going to work, and it did. And I should have known that before I checked, right? So I'm trying to expose you to that. I did not put y-hat here, but I did put a Gregorian script character in both R and Python earlier in the slides. Okay, so we take y-hat. What does that do? We're going to sample this. I call those vectors. Do you call those vectors? The C thing? That's a vector? Okay. I believe C stands for cons, so it's a constructor, but I'm not sure. Does anyone know? It's concat? Okay, thank you. This to me felt a little sloppy. I just said male and female. I do know they're male and female from summary heights. I think I would have rather sampled over the column names. You can do this the way you want. I took the list equal of test index. There's many ways to divide this up. That's what I did. So what is this doing? I am arbitrarily selecting either male or female up to the length of the text index. So for my test set, I am going to randomly assign a sex marker to every single height. Does that make sense? Randomization, I'm just guessing. Sometimes this worked pretty well. For example, the stock market guessers perform just as well as everyone else, right? So sometimes you just guess. We can calculate the accuracy of the guessing method. How do we do that? Well, this was a bit goofy to me, but I think it makes sense when we look at it. Y-hat is the predictor. That is a vector or data frame, or it's some collection, and it's a collection of genders. And the genders have some index, or it's a collection of sexes. The sexes have some index, and they have the same number of sexes in it as the size of the test set. So I look at every single element in the test set, and I look at its sex, and then I compare that with my predictor, and I see if they're the same. If they are the same, I get a 1, and if they're not the same, I get a 0. When I take the mean of all those 1s and 0s, it gives me a percentage accuracy. Is this how you commonly predict accuracies? This felt like quite a hack to me, but I went with it. I would have been inclined, I think, naively, and this doesn't make sense, but I want to disclose my cognitive bias. I would have taken the sum of this and then just divided by the length, but that is the same as the mean, right? That's the same thing. So it doesn't make sense to do that. I have just a brain teaser here. I don't know how much you would want to get into this, but I did expect this to be 0.5. And then I asked myself what I expected the standard deviation to be, and I had no idea. And that, I think, is actually quite easy to calculate. But I didn't know. We want to do better than 50-50 because, remember, we're trying to get and keep our job at White Rose a state, and we're trying to outcompete Archery Summit, which means we have to predict better than average so that we can make more informed decisions and have an informed strategy for our company. So, how are we going to do this? Well, here's one way to do things. I'm going to take some assessments over the data in my data set. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to group up my data by sex marker, and I'm going to look at two things for each of the two partition sets. So I'm going to put my male set on one side and my female set on the other side, and over both of those sets, I'm going to determine the mean of heights and the standard deviation of heights. And then I can look at this little tibble I have here, and I have a self-reported 64.9, which is 6'5", right? Which I think is close to 5'5", sorry. The 6 in, why don't we use base 12, right? Like, what's wrong with base 12? And the answer is it's not base 16. Great, okay. So, we have 5'5". That still feels wrong to me. I've got to stop looking at the slides. Oh, no, it makes sense, but I'm looking at a 6, right?
Yeah.
I'm very suggestible. Okay. So we have, I might just have to say 65 inches. Okay. So we have 65 inches, which we think is close to population average height for female identified people, probably. And then we have 5'9.3" for male identified. I think people are getting taller over time. Sorry. Do you have?
Oh, I think that like 69 would be like 5'8" or something.
Yeah, 5'9". I think 70 is 5'10".
60 over 12 is 5.
Yeah, you're right.
60 over 12 is 5.
I just remember I was so.
So I think, wow, I used a minus sign to do a variable assignment. The reason I'm using Python right now, by the way, is I spent a few days trying to get R to work at the command line, and then I gave up. So if some of you know how to do that, shoot me a DM on Discord. Or follow me on Instagram. Okay. So the way I think I want to do this is I take divided by 12 and I take the remainder of the 12. Right, so that's 5'9".
I'm just dumb.
I don't think you're allowed to say that. I think
Well,
negative
I'm not
self-talk
allowed
is
to say that.
bad.
I made a very simple mathematical mistake.
Hate it when that happens. If someone ever tries to trick you into liking Python, I just subtracted 60 from 69.3 and got 9.29999999997. Never trust a computer. How did it get that wrong? This is literally just, it's as bad at math as we say we are when we feel bad about ourselves, right? That's just objectively wrong, and it's a subtraction. Okay. I didn't know it was going to do that, but I am tilted now. Okay. Okay. So, I think one natural thing to do here would be to say, just like, speaking broadly, so I'm suggesting now like what an intuition might be, right? 65 is about 4.5 less than 69, right? Those things are 4.5 apart. The standard deviation's a little less than 4. I don't know. Maybe we can suggest there's some midpoint between the two of them at which we predict one of the two sex markers to be more likely, right? I'm going to step through an example of one way to do that, and at all points, see if you find it persuasive. So, one of the ways to do this is we can predict male if the observation, which in this case is the height, we are observing heights, to predict sex markers, which means the height is either the dependent or independent variable. I don't know. I really should learn that stuff, right? But we're committed now. Okay, so I can say like, hey, I have a person whose height is within 2 standard deviations of the, did I find the mean or the median? Stop calling me mean. Okay. You got to help me out here with the interaction. Okay, so we've got the mean. We've got the mean, and we're going to subtract 2 standard deviations from it. There was a variety of ways to write this. I wasn't sure the funnest way. This text just barely is like trying to go off the screen, right? There's a little scroll bar at the bottom here. Open to feedback on that slide design. I wasn't sure the best way to write this. I really wanted this to be on one line because it felt like it should be to me. But what's going on here? We computed the summary on the previous slide. So it's this thing. It's a 2x3 tibble. I'm going into the second category of the tibble. Why is that? Male. I'm grabbing the mean height and the mean standard deviation. I'm taking the standard deviation times 2, and I'm subtracting it from the mean height. That's going to give me some value. What is it? Well, I calculated it here. It's 62. And yeah, just the way I showed this is I made another vector. I made my new predictor, and I used an if-else. I am assuming familiarity with if-else. Stop me if that doesn't make sense. If you are doing Python, there is also something called an if-else. It just has a space in it, right? So I take an if-else. We check to see if the observed height is greater than, I know what to call this, right? So the male mean less 2 standard deviations. If we are greater than that, we predict male. Otherwise, we predict female. We throw that into this factorization. And then we are going to check to see if the predictor is more accurate, and it is drastically more accurate, shooting up to 77%, which in many classes is a C+, and in my class is an A. Or not, depending. Don't push it. Okay. And what does this mean? It means if anything is ever within 2 standard deviations of the mean of any data set, you should assume it is a member of that population. Which might be the wrong thing to learn from this. I wonder what's on the next slide. No, optimization. It doesn't matter if we're morally wrong if we're really good at it. Please do not tell your ethics teacher that I am talking. Okay. Just be like, Calvin, who's that? We show up today to 505 and just teach each other. Okay. So what did I do here? You had so much like energy at 6 o'clock, by the way. Okay. So I was walking to archive. This is completely unrelated, and I was like, wow, I've never taught a class that this is great. And then I realized every time I've taught in the master's program previously, I taught the last day of the week.
Oh, yeah. Never do it.
The vibes are different. Okay, so what's going on here? The way I'm thinking of this is when I started teaching myself machine learning, because I was sitting in a 400 level math class and I didn't understand what was going on, I implemented this thing called gradient descent, which is going to be a recurring tangent. And the way I implemented gradient descent is I took a bunch of measurements, and this was so long ago they still had physical paper you could write on, which hasn't existed for thousands of years, where they hide that. And then I looked at my physical piece of paper, and I saw where values were increasing and decreasing, and I found the lowest point. That's kind of what we're doing here. We're just doing gradient ascent. And so, what have I done? I took a sequence from 61 to 70. Those are height values, right? And what is 70? Where's my... .510. Hope that's VS Code. Never use tabs. Okay. So, at 61 inches, we have 77% accuracy, 78, 81, 83, 82, and so on. What this suggested to me, actually, is it's quite likely that the optimal point is a non-integer value, probably between, let's see, 64 and 65. You can actually figure out the optimal value if you want to. I'm assuming you all know how to do that. It's just a bit of code. But all of these, every single one of these values gives a higher accuracy than 50%, which would suggest something about our data set. I wonder what. I wonder what's on the next slide.
Ethics.
No, ganders! Which is actually a gender, right? Goose and gander, right? Get it? This is a play on words. Okay, let's take a gander, right?
Yep.
Come on. Okay.
Yep.
I expect this one in the course of it. Okay. Something I like doing, I'm trying to teach you machine learning. I'm going to try and teach you a lot of computer literacy as well, because that was something that prevented me from learning machine learning when I was doing this. And so when I talk to you about, hey, you can use RStudio or Posit Cloud or VS Code, there's a reason to do that, which is that I didn't have things that worked when I was an undergrad, right? That just says plot. I am not using ggplots. This is built in. There are so many built-in plotting tools just around in the universe from like 1993, before anyone invented making plots that work. And they are really fast and really easy to use. I use these all the time in my EDA. I don't know if you use them. I would like you to know about these things. There's 3 different things that plot in Python that I never used until I made these slides, and I like all of them. I never used this before. One of the people that I shared these slides with was just like, hey, did you know you can just type plot into R and it does? I was like, that completely rules, right? So anyways, this is the previous slide, and you can tell me which one of these is easier to look at, and I have an opinion. And I think I was accidentally doing a strobe there when I was going back and forth between dark and light, so I apologize for that. Anyway, there's 64 the highest, and I think that is much easier to see than figuring out that 0.83 is higher than the other ones. Excuse me. What time is it? Okay. I have to look physically. 9:09. Okay. Hey, it's 9:09 and 5:05.
Haha.
Okay. Anyways, okay. Maybe I'm tired. I had a baby in my house like 2 nights ago. It was very exciting. Also, my cat loves babies. I didn't know that. I assumed they were like sworn enemies or something, right? Okay. So we calculate the best cutoff with which max. I'm not going to talk about the ways to find the maximum of a vector in a programming language, right? There is approximately infinity ways to do this in every language, and there's approximately infinity languages. Anyways, calculate the best cutoff at 64. These slides all do the same thing. I wanted you to see all of them. Okay. We calculate the best cutoff, 64. I wonder what the next slide does.
Ethics.
Nope. No, we're going to evaluate. What do you think the next slide does? No, it's a confusion matrix.
The second you stop guessing ethics.
No, it's always ethics.
We've actually secretly been doing ethics the entire time. I love looking at confusion matrices, not just because I like every matrix. I made this graphically. Is there a built-in way in R to make a confusion matrix? Okay, because this was unbelievably painful. That is 350 characters of text to generate a confusion matrix. Anyways, you can use this whenever you want. I would love you to be able to make confusion matrices by copy-pasting code, which I could not do when I made these slides, and when I realized I couldn't do that, I spent a lot of time making sure it worked. So this one went into my bookmarks. I used a white to blue gradient. I don't think that's a perceptually uniform color map, but it could be. You all might be able to tell better than I do. But what's really going on here? There are large numbers of male-identified survey respondents and relatively fewer numbers of female-identified survey correspondents. I showed you the summary when I introduced this data. And I said there's approximately, what was it, like 800 male and 200 female. I added them together. I said there was 1,050 total. Do you recall this? Yes. Do you remember internalizing that and thinking about what it would mean for machine learning? Okay, good job. You all passed the test. That probably means that on the next slide there's going to be some ethics.
Yeah.
Nope, it's accuracy. Okay. The thing that's going on here is if you just predict men every time, you get very close to 80% accuracy. The thing that was actually dropping the accuracy when we were getting at the higher end of the prediction is you're predicting just so few people to be male that your accuracy was dropping, right? And I say to that, it's raining men, which is this song. Oh, my sound's not plugged in. Anyways, watch this on your own as part of the homework. My bit rate's terrible. Look at that. Okay, we love the Weather Girls. Okay. So one of the things that you have to do in your contract if you ever teach a data science class and you're a computer scientist is you're required to fit in a pie chart on the first day of class. In case Kendall, who is not here today, only Grayson is here today, in case Kendall comes to class, you need someone to show up to Professor Heather Katada Smalley's office tomorrow morning and be like, Calvin was teaching us about pie charts in the data science program, right?
I think I'll see Dr. Gore before.
All right, Kendall, you know your homework. Or sorry, Grayson. I also did a box plot. The box plot made a lot more sense to me, right? What I liked about this box plot is sort of suggested initially this notion that there should be some dividing point between these two heights with the means and the standard deviations we saw where you come quite likely to do one or the other, even if you have two overlapping bell curves, right? To me, that's quite visible on the box plot. I think I would rather have shown two stacked curves with a different color. I didn't think of doing that at the time. The box plots are useful. And I had box plots on the mind. So take a look at that. Weather Girls, okay.
Feathers.
Got you. There's a lot of examples here. One of the things that I changed about this slide that I think you should be aware of, ethics is always changing. I was talking to Professor Hank Eibser and Professor Rachel Brown, who some of you may have had last term. We are the Portland-based faculty, so we drive down here together. And I really want to talk about operating systems, and they really want to talk about human-centered computing, right? So I was talking about operating systems and not listening to them. And while they were talking to each other, one of the things they were talking about is how much ethics is developing and how quickly it's developing versus t-tests, which have been the same for 40 years, right? And in fact, so have operating systems, but don't tell me that, right? So there's one change that I've made to these slides since 2001. I think this, like, flippantly and humorously said killer robots when I got these slides. Those are real now, so I just changed it to drone warfare. You can think what you want about that, but I was not going to put killer robots on this slide. That's real. They exist. I did not make them exist. I would like to point out to you, because fair housing is the top point of the ultimate column. Did you notice how I didn't use numerical indices there because we're in an R Python combo class? Yeah? Okay. I want to see that in the course evals. Okay. So, fair housing is up there. Meta has been in the news. Meta, to my knowledge, is the first company sued for violating the Fair Housing Act, which they did by offering some form of differential loan offers to people based on predicted, not self-reported, racial identification. And so I did not actually know it was possible for Facebook to violate the Fair Housing Act, but they did figure out how to do that. And I'm sure the fact they were prosecuted by the Justice Department for violating the Fair Housing Act has nothing to do with their current editorial policies. So do not put in the course of the okay. Right. Okay, I'm going to read you an exact quote. Reasonable people will disagree over subtle matters of right and wrong. Thus, the important part of data ethics is committing to consider the ethical consequences of your choices. The difference between regular ethics and data ethics is that algorithms scale really easily. An aside, that was written in 2001 when there was 1% of the data there is now, right? Okay. Thus, seemingly small decisions can have wide-ranging So I would certainly never confirm nor deny that I am the member of a communist organization. But I claim that there is no ethical computation under capitalism. I claim that the usage of data or computing is ethical if and only if it challenges rather than strengthens existing power relations. Let's introduce some vocabulary. This is sort of a chill out and listen portion of the lecture. We were meant to get here as you're getting cognitive fatigue from all of the new material, but wanted to introduce a few things to you that were kind of interesting. And this is where you get to do algebra, which is trivial. We're going to introduce a few terms, and we're going to have a little bit of an exercise. Machine learning is usage of data to find a function that minimizes prediction error. What is the problem with this? Right, we're doing prediction. We don't always necessarily know what data we're predicting against, so we have to make assumptions or design decisions or some other way of making an informed decision about what we expect the future hold, and that is what differentiates it from descriptive statistics in 501, right? Features or variables are the things that I often think of as the values or observations in columns. The outcome variable is the thing I am trying to predict. We denoted it as y in the DS Lab Heights example. A regression is a way we take features and try to convert them into an outcome variable mathematically. You know what the RMSE is? That's the root mean square error. Classification is the version of regression that works on categorical variables. We just showed a confusion matrix. And then sample splitting is what we used to create data partition for. Some examples of features are age, income, and education level. This is not a data ethics class. I would encourage you, if you're looking for something to do sometime, look at the predictive power of birth zip code over educational attainment. That is why I am not either a member or not a member of a communist organization. I looked at that data set once, and it changed my mind about everything. And I have never recovered, right? Education level is very interesting. I was just looking at, you don't all have to like follow me on LinkedIn or anything. I was just looking at how the gender gap in STEM PhDs predicts economic growth in a country. And it is like they are almost a function of each other, right? Like economic growth is just a function of gender equality in, I get graduate level STEM, which is this room. Hi, welcome, congratulations, I'm glad you're here. Variables, things that you can change, right? I cannot change my birth zip code, right? But I can take a measurement data set where I can look at equivalent groups in different birth zip codes, right? We are looking at a wine data set, right? So this weather thing is very interesting. I don't know too much about wine, but everything I've heard about the wine industry recently is that crop yields are completely dominated by wildfire now. You have to not have a wildfire very close to your vineyard in any given year to produce a high quality crop. That was pretty interesting to me. And so even if you are in Napa Valley and you usually sell your bottles of wine for $300 a bottle, which is like, that's the money machine, right? If you have one forest fire, you can't sell it that year. It's the only thing that can cause you to not make money, right? And wildfires are predicted by a large number of variables, maybe things like drought, but like El Nino Southern Oscillation poses a financial risk to Napa Valley in a way that was sort of non-obvious to me, but is very important to the people in that region, right? The outcome variable, you can predict passed or failed on a student's exam results, and you all know the algorithm I use for that in this class. You're actually watching. I'm so used to students not actually looking at me while I'm talking. Good job. There's a lot of chess.com in my introductory CS class last term, and you could tell when you graded the exams. Okay. I was looking at these slides and I was like, Dang, features and variables sound a lot like each other. I should ask a generative AI what the difference is. Can you tell this slide is generated by generative AI? The things I saw, ChatGPT specifically, I'm not sure about Gemini, has a really strong preference to bold one noun prior to a sentence, and very frequently it doesn't make sense to do that. This slide kind of rubbed me the wrong way for that reason, but I wanted you to see it. So we could argue that a feature, perhaps, of a data set that is perhaps markdown slides could be whether there are bolded single nouns leading. I call them items after LaTeX itemization, but whatever the list entries are, right? It's either an HTML li element or an \item LaTeX element. So anyways, that's a good difference between variables and features. We introduced regressions. I'm assuming familiarity with regressions. We're going to spend a lot of time with linear models because linear models are the basis of machine learning. That is why we have to be clear on them. That is why I had to ask Jeffrey about interaction models. Thank you. The answer key to the interaction model, by the way, is it was adding an indicator variable to the point value. Is that correct?
It's the,
It might have been points or price. I don't remember. Yeah. So yeah, there's just an indicator value in there. That's why the two lines are so close together, because the magnitude of an indicator variable is 0, 1. And both price and points were much higher than that, whichever one was getting added together. So we have our regressions. Root mean square error is the thing you saw me predict. When I predicted it in this class, I created a new column in my data frame. I took that column in the data frame and I set it equal to the squared residual prediction at that point. So I combined a prediction, and then I took a summation over that and took the square root. There are other ways to predict root mean square error. At least the sklearn machine learning library has a way to do that built in a single expression, right? The thing with root mean square error is it's a simple arithmetic application, so it shouldn't be too bad. Classification, you know what this is, and confusion matrix. One thing I would like to point out to you, I don't know how many of you are following along on my markdown slides. There's an interesting technology that I hit on this slide that's a bit of an Easter egg for you, and I'm going to point it out. This code on this slide is generated by me taking the code from the earlier slide and running it here, with one difference. In my markdown, I used something known as a cell magic to set the echo to false. This is our code. I have directed Quarto to not render the R code, so there's no visible code on this slide. It is only showing the output of the code cell. Does this make sense to you? Okay, I thought this was a cool technology. I wanted to give you an example of it. This is also written by ChatGPT, but that's because I just needed some text on this slide, so I'm not apologizing for that. And here's the sample splits. Okay, bonus slides, precision recall. Okay, Hendrik Oram, not Jamison Watts TM. So this is our friend in Portland. Dr. Hendrik Oram works for Umpqua, which is either a credit union or a bank. Does anyone know? Thanks, thank you. It's also a dairy product.
Yes. No, well, actually, frozen desserts are different than dairy products.
Thank you. So I could classify.
A frozen dessert company, well.
Okay. So that is a classification task that I failed. Okay. And there's also a difference between banks and credit unions. Probably. Professor Hendrik Oram teaches in our master's level, and before that taught at like a magnet high school for huge nerds, and like taught them to write proofs in LaTeX. And what Hendrik Oram said, and this made sense when I learned that background, is students are not going to understand the precision recall trade-off unless you force them to actually calculate it yourself. I gave an example earlier in this class of how I calculate things, which is I opened up Python at the command line. I think you all have RStudio open in front of you, right? So actually do these calculations. I'm not making you do them. Someone else is making you do them, right? So I'm innocent, right? Precision is the true positive rate over the true positive plus false positive rate. When we think of our confusion matrix, right, that's 2 diagonal points depending on our correctness. So in our original confusion matrix, we had a large, very blue square over here, and then we had 2 light-colored squares here and here, and then we had the height below, male, mean, less 2 standard deviation, people who also self-reported a female identification, right? And so that was the 2 true positive points, and then we also have the false positives, right? Recall is the true positive over the true positive plus false negative, right? Imagine I have a fraud detection model that gives 1,000 credit card transactions, each a risk score. I am 100% sure this is a real example. That's why I introduced Professor Hendrik Oram as working for Umpqua Bank, right? We suppose an arbitrary risk cutoff. Why do we need to? Just to specify, right? So we have an arbitrary risk score cutoff of 77. Has everyone written 77 down in their code that they're using to calculate these answers? Okay. There exist 18 transactions for which the risk is assessed to be greater than 77. 18. Of these, 12 are actually fraudulent. We assume in this case, and I point out because we were just making some discussion of ethics, we assume the accuracy of this assessment. I have had recent interactions with a financial institution that make me cautious about accepting their definition of fraud. I got a certain eviction notice on Friday, and I pay my rent. Okay. Are you all tenants mostly? Yeah, okay. Good for you. There exist 20 fraudulent transactions for which the risk is assessed to be lower than 77. Calculate precision, recall, and accuracy. And I'm going to go around and talk to you. And then I think when you've calculated that, there's an answer here. Okay. I think we can be done. Right? Oh, I don't know why I'm looking at that clock. Okay. So hash this out, jibber jabber with me, and then this is our last thing for tonight. So get cracking. Are you cracking? Release the kraken. Sorry, I can stop anytime.
I'm putting the numbers on my computer because I can't do that anymore. I need the question. Okay, imagine I have a phone.
Yeah. I've never played tag well. But I didn't.
False positive is the difference between
Wait, you didn't move back.
projected numbers.
I really wanted to sit here and shout ethics.
You know how hard it was to make sure that I skipped over ethics letter that we came out of it.
Very excited.
I was looking at 20. Yeah, okay. So 18 total.
Yeah. Well, because I looked ahead.
Yeah.
And I was like, at some point, I'm going to choose right.
No, it's okay. No, it's okay.
I guess now.
And then
Well, you didn't give me access.
12 over.
Plus,
Sorry, I had a car. You heard the slide.
right, so
Yeah.
6 over 6 is 9.
Yeah.
3 over 8.
Wow.
75, yeah.
I would never violate it.
I have 75 actually.
It's May, right?
Wait, we didn't do the accuracy.
I was fine on the first? No. Oh, you're close. Like 3 letters.
So, true positive over total is the same.
What's the other?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's always tough, right? Because usually I think like questions like that, people are like, like the first 3 weeks, like,
So take the 20 false negatives, 3 from 1,000. So 12 plus
I don't know if everybody told me.
962. So true positive.
Because that's the difference between projected and
The difference between total
fraction. So that's that difference.
Or total
Oh,
minus
yeah.
so all I did was
Oh, yeah.
identify
Yeah.
thank you. So it's false negatives. If you have any other, so I remember anything else.
But then they said,
No, you said to just make it up. False negatives. So like one, so total transition. I was trying to think. Total minus false positive.
I collect advisory fees. I
That'll be your 966.
I'm slaying so which is the active.
False negative is.
already pattern on
Yeah.
it, right? I'm gonna back this up and that'll be less.
Oh God. Okay.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I'm gonna try to do that one tomorrow so it's fresh. But
I just I think about any colder, my joints.
I love this.
It's kind of it's kind of fun.
That's why I said
What the banded? Yeah. It's what the oh yeah. So I know. If I'm gonna suffer, I might as well get suffer.
okay. It's Wednesday.
Data engineering.
Well, now that
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about, but thank you. Okay, let's see if you.
Like a new.
Yes. What? Yeah. This process about it.
That's a lot. I have like 87 students.
Yeah, last spring.
That's probably fair.
All right, see you tomorrow.
I have 5 advisors right now. I mean, technically, it's not even given advisor, but we
And I've realized
But
that right now.
I personally didn't like mixing that and the
You have. I appreciate you.
Yeah, I was like, yes,
Yeah, I got you.
It's one thing when my computer was being moved for the last half year.
There was like 5 years ago. So,
That's genuinely, I only write down what I'm said.
yeah, that works. Yeah.
It was
Alright. I live like right across the street from the gym. But, yeah.
We can do that at like 4.
Yeah. Yeah.
See, I was in bed.
Yeah, sounds great. Cool, thank you.
I was in bed, but not because of bed.
It'll all work out somehow.
I started reusing.
Also, yeah, you want to do 4:45 for general.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah. Could be funny, assuming traffic isn't like so bad. And also, I feel like if we're like a few minutes late, it's fine. It's a 4-hour slot. Definitely, you know. Missing a couple minutes will not be able we survived.
where to go? That's the word.
Yeah.
I was like, that's so the same thing. Yeah, I had. So I had
Yeah, where it's like you like move, like that, you know, like the world is spinning.
Yeah,
I like something.
Is he taking the ball with you?
I'll stress more. Don't know. Seems impossible. It was going to like.
Cute one.
Tennis media day yet?
No,
Is it Chris?
Yeah.
Yes. Literally, Chris just like works on us. Like, yeah, not like our team, which may or may not be.
Oh, I think it makes sense, even if you explain it.
I don't think he likes anything. I don't think he likes that. He wants a person who's trying to like change something on the Instagram.
What's your background?
He has like logged on there and Instagram or posted or made us an edit or something in years, and I was like, so
Alright, so that's
you
good.
can't do it if you're not.
I might have a question.
Yeah.
I did too, but a long time back. And it was very obvious to me. I was like, I don't know. I can't do this.
We
But even like, he saw me today, I was like,
We had to beg him so much for media day last
like,
year.
2 years
Find
has just
out
been
on
first and
streaming, and
second.
I'm sleeping until last minute.
Yeah.
I
have to go back and look.
I don't feel stressed. I have.
I remember what it is.
Yeah, we've been asking.
Thank you so
for
much.
this since we started it, because you guys, yeah, and so we're like, we'd rather just do it earlier this year.
Alright.
What an interesting guy.
Yeah.
This is a bit of a weird first class for me. I was in and out a lot. I just wanted to communicate with you because I just got like random family troubles that I've been having to deal with in the span of the last hour. So
It happens. You doing okay?
yeah, I was
Okay.
just wondering if you were going to share this just so I could. I was out of it for
Yeah.
filling part of it, so if you could share it, then I can take a peek at it tomorrow.
So, come around to look at my screen.
yeah.
I am typing for the people following along on YouTube. The class is over right now. Okay?
Awesome.
So I'm going to do here, I'm going to come in, I'm going to turn off this recording, right? Stop screen.